T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street, and there's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know the air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. My life has value.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Global Watchman News, exposing satanic world government. Hope you guys are all doing well. This is going to be the presentation that is continued from yesterday. This is the next one that Robbie and I were talking about that we were going to play. I know Robbie did play it yesterday over on exposing satanic world government page. And I said that I was going to come back today and I was going to replay it for everybody over on YouTube. But I've decided that I'm going to play it for both of you guys, YouTube and exposing satanic world government, only because I think it's very important that you guys see it again. So I hope you guys are all doing well. If you're in the chat room, I just ask that you please keep it family friendly. There will be moderators that will be in there to make sure that we do stay within the terms of service put forth to us by these platforms so that we can continue to utilize them. Again, welcome. See, there's the usual suspects in our chat room. Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. So, okay, without further ado, I'm going to start this presentation.
Would you describe yourself as a conspiracy theorist?
If you can back that up with information, it's not a theory. Much of it is backed up by hard, factual information.
We're talking about two very specific proven cases,
Yes.
right? Real, huge, elite, powerful people that were also active pedophiles, right?
Yes. The pedophile rings have gotten so big that the intelligence agencies began to leak all this info.
Whether we're talking about Facebook, whether we're talking about Google, whether we're talking about the government of any country, they know everything about us.
The American people are fed up with fake news, and the mainstream media they cannot trust.
And I want you all to know that we are fighting the fake news. It's fake, phony, fake.
Here you have federal law enforcement discussing removing the President of the United States by non-democratic means. More confirmation than we ever thought we'd have that we are dealing with, yes, a deep state and what is the biggest abuse of power, corruption scandal in the history of this country.
I'm more like into the Rothschild family, the Illuminati. I'm into that.
Are you one of the people that think 9/11 could have been an inside job?
Absolutely. Are you one of those guys who just watches TV and just feels like they're just telling you the truth?
Do you believe that the Twin Towers were destroyed by forces of the American government or similar?
We have to remain open-minded to any kind of possibility. I think it's interesting the way these tragic events are used to enforce further controls on us.
They use force to make you do what the deciders have decided you must do.
You are a slave. You were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch.
We start putting these ideas and ideals on people. That's why we are in a simulation.
Maybe we're in a computer simulation. I can't rule that out.
Are we living in simulation?
I find it hard to argue against that possibility.
Physicists are providing some of the clearest evidence yet that the universe could be a big projection.
I've always wondered about whether we live in a simulated universe, and maybe we do.
They're creating a world, a simulated world, all around us. It's all simulated.
I never expected that the movie The Matrix might be an accurate representation of the place in which I live.
There is a multi-level conspiracy, a multi-dimensional conspiracy to enslave humanity in a fake reality.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
We've got to wake up. We've got to say no. We've got to get angry and get in the face of the new world order.
So many things are going to happen and are going to unfold and are unfolding that are going to show us that what religion and materialistic science has led us to believe is the nature of life, what we're doing here, and all the rest of it has been the most gigantic con trick in the history of the human race. We're about to wake up.
The disclosure of this subject is the most important announcement in the history of the human race.
Best thing that ever happened.
The best thing that ever happened in the history of humanity.
"1984 is, I believe, a quite terrifying masterpiece. So terrifying, in fact, I don't think I should like to read another like it. You once claimed that you have an ability to face unpleasant facts. Is that what you've demonstrated in 1984 by drawing an accurate portrait of the future?"
I think that something like 1984 could actually happen. This is the direction the world is going in at the present time.
The American people are living in a matrix. They don't understand the truth of how things are working in this country. The whole agenda is to create a one-world government where everybody has an RFID chip implanted in them. All money is to be in those chips, right? There'll be no more cash. And this is giving me straight from Rockefeller himself. This is what they want to accomplish.
Imagine a world under complete totalitarianism. It's a world of perpetual war, surveillance, and mind control, governed by a singular ideology. All independent thoughts and individualism apart from this reigning philosophy is considered to be a thought crime. At the helm of this state oppression is an ambiguous entity called Big Brother, and every day it requires a ritualistic cult worship to the state. But aside from this tyrannical adulation of Big Brother, there's also a calculated manipulation of language designed for one reason: mind control. People are conditioned through repetition and propaganda.
We just legalized propaganda being used by the government on our own people. We just made that legal. We are literally living in 1984. They are changing the answers to math now.
They've given up the power of original thought. They're under mind control. And I've been talking about mind control for decades.
It's so amazing.
It's working, though, ain't it? It's working.
It sure is.
There are new technologies that provide the expertise to control people totally without their knowledge. Methods of advertising that manipulate us against our will.
As this 1952 CIA memo says, the aim is controlling an individual to the point where he will do our bidding against his will. Dr. Gottlieb wrote that he and his colleagues had been able to maintain contact with the leading edge of developments in the field of biological and chemical control of human behavior.
The significance of the research, he explained, is that although the cell phone power is low, electromagnetic radiation can nevertheless have an effect on mental behavior when transmitting at the proper frequency. What is this article, Jamie? Scientific American.
In Scientific American, it's titled Mind Control by Cell Phone.
So would you think that they're making this
No,
5G
they declassified last year a 37-page CIA manual from the 1970s where they were putting up cell towers that look like trees, already testing it in neighborhoods. It's been in the newspaper that the cell towers are being used for mind control.
They use force to make you do what the deciders have decided you must do. They use force to make you do what the deciders have decided you must do.
Orwell refers to it as reality control. The majority of people living under the system are weak-minded, incapable of understanding anything more than the party's worldview. This willful ignorance is instrumental in the state's control over the peons.
It is almost beyond a science now. It is an exact mechanism of control. They can shape, mold, sculpture, form, and literally create any reality they want. You know who they are.
They do not want you to think too much. That is why our country and our world has become so proliferated with entertainments, mass media, game shows, television shows, and every kind of entertainment to keep the human mind entertained so that you don't get in the way of important people by doing too much thinking. You had better wake up and understand that there are people who are guiding your life and you don't even know it.
The real owners, the big wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. Forget the politicians. They're irrelevant. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear.
Everybody, this audience has been drawing comparisons, seeing the comparisons between what we are experiencing in our world and Orwell's book. And it's very, very scary what's going to be coming around the corner here. They're saying that they're already testing cameras in Holland, and they're ready to implement them in London for the Olympics in 2012, where they listen to the streets. And there's new facial recognition software that's out that's going to identify everybody in every photo that's posted on Facebook, on the internet.
We're forced to live in a real way naked before power. Whether we're talking about Facebook, whether we're talking about Google, whether we're talking about the government of any country, they know everything about us.
Then there's the perpetual war to fight an unseen enemy. In some cases, the government bombing itself to keep the masses living in fear. Orwell describes the concept, quote, "The object of waging a war is always to be in a better position in which to wage another war."
An atrocity like 9/11 was planned decades in advance. And the first indications and projections, ideations of this idea came out, for example, in a movie by Arnon Milchan in 1978 called The Medusa Touch with Richard Burton, in which the climactic scene is a 747 flying into the Pan Am building.
So many of the ideas and concepts in this book are applicable to the way our society has evolved today. In fact, since the explosive revelations about the NSA spying on American citizens, sales of 1984 have skyrocketed.
The social structure, the control of information, the perpetual state of war, the personification of the party, the telescreens, the snitch culture, all of this stuff is coming to a fruition. We don't have much time before we're living in the Orwellian nightmare.
The world is not random. The world is moving in the direction it is because it's been planned to do that. This is why Aldous Huxley in Brave New World, 1932, and George Orwell, Eric Blair, as he was really called, with 1984, published in 1948, that's why they've been so incredibly accurate in predicting the way the world is going, because they weren't coming totally from their imagination. Because this plan for the global Orwellian state of total control, which is daily coming in, I mean, look around. It's not being planned for 5 years or 10 years. It's been planned for a long, 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 long time.
And they go to these billionaire functions. I don't just know this. I've talked to people. And I was in Wired magazine 20-something years ago, Why the Future Doesn't Need Us. Bill Joy, a billionaire, co-owner of Sun Microsystems. He goes to a billionaire meeting with 200 guys, and the consensus was, we're not going to let people play video games and party all day. We're going to set up a world government. We're going to slowly titrate the dose and poison the public, dumb them down, put electromagnetic radiation out with 5G that scrambles their DNA, lowers their IQ. We're going to cause mass mental illness and a controlled societal collapse that'll then be organized and controlled in the mop-up crew by robots, controlled by the globalist programmers who believe with the off-world entities they're in communication with, that they're going to be given the operation to upload and be in that larger kind of Borg cube system.
Okay,
if they sell the country out. You're not given the real technology. You're not given the real life extension. You're given the crap, Joe. And the Earth is seen as like an egg yolk to give the propulsion power for this new thing that's going to be born. And whether you believe that or not, just like when
the new thing meaning artificial intelligence?
Beyond that. It's a fusion of artificial intelligence and a whole synthesis of new life forms.
The fear of a global dystopia, a nightmarish future where the masses have been reduced to brainwashed zombies who live under the fist of a totalitarian world government, is becoming an ever-increasing concern in our time. Many have been insisting that our world and the cozy, independent lives we think we live are, in fact, controlled at every turn by a small group of powerful elites who hide in the shadows and conspire to make us more complacent and docile. Knowledge of these shadowy elite and their dark plans of global domination have been known for some time, having been exposed decades ago in the dystopian novels Brave New World by Aldous Huxley and 1984 by George Orwell. both of which seem to have accurately predicted a distant future of unprecedented tyranny and mass brainwashing. Indeed, it seems that every day Orwell's and Huxley's visions are becoming more factual than fiction. For example, the release of previously classified information via WikiLeaks has revealed hitherto unimaginable levels of government control and corruption, and the disturbing rise of a seemingly omniscient surveillance state reflective of Big Brother in Orwell's 1984 has also been a serious cause for alarm. Orwell's concepts in particular have proven to possess an eerily predictive quality, such as doublethink, that is, the ability to hold two contradictory opinions simultaneously. This seemingly fictional concept has manifested in our own time in a very real way among radical protest groups that have emerged across the West in recent years. For example, Antifa, or anti-fascists, who use violence to fight for peace. Or the Black Lives Matter movement, members of which claim that blacks are unfairly targeted by a racist police force and yet still show unanimous support for the Democrat Party, whose political platform seeks to have only the police have weapons. Or widespread feminist support of Islam, despite the religion's avowed opposition to women's rights. These and other radicalized groups are connected with a loose confederation of activists known as social justice warriors, who often fight racism and sexism by demonizing white men, yet another clear example of doublethink.
Judging by what she wrote on Twitter, Sarah Jeong is an angry bigot, and not in a subtle way. Here are some examples of her tweets. Quote, "Oh man, it's kind of sick how much joy I get out of being cruel to old white men." The New York Times decided to double down on Sarah Jeong's behalf. Here's part of the statement the paper sent out about her. Quote, "Jeong's journalism and the fact she is a young Asian woman have made her a subject of frequent online harassment. For a period of time, she responded to that harassment by imitating the rhetoric of her harassers. In other words, it's not her fault. White racism caused Sarah Jeong's racism against white people. She's the victim here."
You're a white male! You're a white man!
Nobody has to save you because you're a white man who gets to do whatever he wants to in this space, right?
I do not need a 40-year-old white dude to tell me what didn't work for him about A Wrinkle in Time. It wasn't made for him.
Yeah, that's nice for
We have
you,
these things called
white man.
scholarships. They think of themselves as arch enemies of racism. They get tattoos on their arm telling you that, and yet they're its chief purveyors. Deep, deep irony.
When you see the social justice warriors saying you're an effing white male, you're not allowed to have an opinion, and they're effing white males saying it to you, there's no irony to them.
You're seeing this creation of the snowflake mentality, where people call themselves anti-fascists while acting like Nazis in terms of destroying freedom of speech and everything. They are in so many ways the stormtroopers of the Orwellian world.
I've been physically attacked by people associated with the far left and Antifa in the past. And this is, like I said, just one of the more recent instances where they've confronted me for seemingly no reason. I mean, this guy doesn't know me. He doesn't know what I'm doing. I was just walking by in Boston with a camera, and immediately I got bombarded by a group of people with masks on just yelling at me.
There's a new group around in Australia and America calling itself Antifa, anti-fascist. They attacked another conservative photojournalist, Andy Note, leaving him bleeding and bruised. Police did nothing during this astonishing, violent, animalistic pack attack. Daisy, it seems to me Antifa are not anti-fascists at all. They are the real fascists.
Tell us what happened.
On Saturday, documenting this protest that was organized by Antifa and its allies, while hearing people chant, "No hate, no fear," I'm suddenly bashed on the back of my head. A mob of people, all dressed in black and wearing masks, started beating me with their fists, and some of them used objects to hit me. I put my arms up to try to shield my face, as well as to signal to them that I was surrendering and that I wasn't there to fight. But that really signaled to them to be more aggressive. So then they started dumping what I believe were milkshakes and eggs, throwing it at my face, which blinded me so I couldn't see. And I was kicked some more, punched some more. After arriving in the emergency room, I had a CT scan, which confirmed that I was diagnosed with a brain hemorrhage.
When you get people together and you let them wear masks and you tell them that they're fighting against some evil, and then they feel justified in hitting a person like you, it is really sickening. When you're trying to enforce your own ideology on other people and you have no tolerance for anybody with a differing opinion, particularly journalists, that is fascism. It's so ironic to call yourself an anti-fascist when you're literally enforcing your own particular ideology to the point of violence, and you're wearing masks and you're running around hitting people and pretending that you're being inundated with Nazis and white supremacists and that this is all necessary. Like that old man that was just driving and they're directing traffic and forcing him to obey them. And then when he doesn't want to, they chase after him and assault him. It's twisted, and it's twisted the way it's being depicted in the media. It's very strange how it's being dismissed.
This shockingly contradictory mindset is found not only among rank-and-file protesters, but has even been exhibited by influential members of the media. In the following clip, CNN anchor Don Lemon expresses two radically opposed views in the very same sentence, a perfect example of doublethink.
I keep trying to point out to people not to demonize any one group or any one ethnicity, and realize the biggest terror threat in this country is white men. Not to demonize any one group or any one ethnicity, and realize the biggest terror threat in this country is white men. So what do we do about that?
It's a frightening development, but reality cannot be ignored. Thousands of brainwashed radicals and protesters across the West have exhibited the very characteristics of the enslaved masses in Orwell's novel. And more than ever before, education and the mainstream media mirror the state-controlled propaganda of 1984's Ministry of Truth, which only allows news and history in line with Big Brother's agenda. Through these propaganda outlets, a gradual and strategic brainwashing campaign has been carried out, giving rise to yet another Orwellian concept, the thought police. That is, groups of people who seek to suppress ideas and speech deemed politically incorrect, as more and more people are being attacked and even arrested for speaking things arbitrarily deemed as hate speech. The rise of political correctness and the resultant fear of saying something potentially offensive is the direct result of totalitarian brainwashing propaganda.
Last Thursday, Middlebury College experienced a scene that's becoming increasingly familiar. Dr. Charles Murray, a scholar at the American Enterprise Institute, was invited to speak. A massive protest greeted him. The intent was not to simply express peaceful dissent, but to shut down his speech. Dr. Murray and the Middlebury professor who interviewed him ran into a mob of protesters, several of whom physically assaulted Dr. Murray's interviewer and forced her to the hospital. The incident and others like it bring into sharp relief a growing tendency on American campuses, an intolerance for freedom of speech and a challenge to intellectual diversity. This incident with Dr. Murray at Middlebury was not the first time this has happened. We're seeing this all over the place. This didn't exist when you and I were going to college. You know, what has happened?
Future generations will look back.
So hate speech is inextricably tied to political correctness or cultural Marxism, and that creates intellectual conformity or intellectual authoritarianism. And that's where you start to see things like safe spaces or trigger warnings or speakers banned from campus or people with unpopular opinions banned from social media. And I know that can seem trivial, but today's social media outrage can be tomorrow's laws. And as we've seen, hate speech laws and political correctness destroys lives, as we see all across Europe. For example, these British men arrested for offensive anti-Islam comments. These people arrested for saying racist things on a tram. Or our very own friend Tommy Robinson, who is charged with inciting racial hatred with a flag that says, F ISIS. Shouldn't other Muslims want to F ISIS? Or this singer arrested for racism after doing a cover of Kung Fu Fighting at the wrong time because a Chinese passerby happened to hear him outside the bar. So what's the end game here with hate speech laws? Well, a couple of things. On that front, we have legal censorship from the government. And that's a problem, but it's not nearly as pervasive as the one we face daily from cultural Marxism in the intimidation, the cultural authoritarianism of intimidating people into self-censorship. Sure, the government may not step in and tell you that you can't say something, but for fear of losing your job, for fear of being ostracized in society, for fear of being exiled as a racist, as a transphobe, or labeled with one of these life-altering names, people are intimidated into silence. At that point, the government's not required, which is the brilliant sleight of hand that you see from the modern left, as seen here by the ACLU, where they will defend legally one's right to freedom of speech, but they will hesitate at nothing to destroy someone's life culturally for saying the wrong thing. And this is why political correctness or cultural Marxism, and they are synonymous, lends itself so fashionably to easy labels. Transphobic, homophobic, xenophobic, racist, bigoted, Uncle Tom, white privilege, mansplaining. All of these are slapped on people with politically incorrect opinions in an attempt to silence you.
Political correctness is quite simply getting the target population to silence itself. That's what it is.
I think free thought is almost dead in this country, that people are bullied into feeling a certain way, and if you don't believe what somebody else does, they will bully you and boycott you and try to kill you.
As the evidence shows, an alarmingly large number of citizens appeared to have fallen victim to government-sponsored mind control and brainwashing techniques, which have, over time, created a generation completely incapable of independent thought or critical thinking. Consequently, thousands have risen up in support for the abolition of all national borders, a goal that has been explicitly recognized by elites as being an integral part of their plan for a one-world government. In other words, people are actively protesting for their own enslavement.
I mean, how do you persuade the struggling economies in Eastern Europe to accept more refugees?
Actually, what we see now in Europe is that the average voter is persuading their governments. We have seen a huge wave of solidarity by citizens for refugees. The same solidarity I would really like to see by the heads of states and governments. They are failing, but they are pressured by their voters, by their citizens to go ahead. I think this is really positive that we have so many people who say a refugee is a person like you and me, and I'm not gonna have those people sleep in the street or starve.
No fear. Refugees are welcome here. No hate, no fear. Refugees are welcome here. No fear, no wall. 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 Sanctuary for all. No fear, no wall. Sanctuary for all. No fear. No borders, no nations. What do you want? What do you want? Open border. What do you want? Open border. What do you want? Right.
Do you believe that the United States needs to have a border?
I do not think that there should be a border in that sense.
So you're okay with illegal aliens coming into the border, right?
Yeah, I don't.
Illegally crossing the border.
I think borders are ridiculous.
Okay.
No hate, no fear. Refugees are welcome here. No hate, no fear. Refugees are welcome here. No fear. Refugees are welcome here. No hate.
Member states are not willing to be living together in solidarity, even though they all signed up to it when they joined the European Union. And a lot of them are not willing to help refugees. That is a problem because the right to ask for asylum is one of the most fundamental rights we have in the European Union. The idea of traveling freely, of overcoming border, that's at the heart of the European Union.
Does more immigration help ordinary Americans? Does it improve the country? Or does it just enrich an elite class, the policymaking class, at the expense of everyone else?
open borders are a disaster. Open borders happened in Europe in two ways. First of all, open borders is the official policy of the EU for the countries within the EU. That is literally what they mean by free movement of people. You can go between the countries wherever you want. But what Angela Merkel did a couple of years ago was also open the external border and say to the refugees fleeing not just violence and war in the Middle East, but also, frankly, poverty in the Middle East and in Africa, come to Europe, come to Germany, we'll take care of you. And then what happens once you go in through the external border of the EU, you can move around wherever you want within the EU itself. And so you saw exactly the same thing happen as you're seeing now here, where you had people coming into Europe through one point of entry and then moving through those countries. It's been a disaster. I've got family members in Germany at the time. They were welcoming those people. They were proud of Angela Merkel for saying, come to Germany. They thought it was a great idea. They were going to prepare food and gifts and making these refugees feel comfortable. Now, 2 years on, I just spoken to them. They think the whole thing's a disaster. The migrants are not integrating. They're not learning German. They can't get jobs. It's a huge burden on the economy and the society. The whole thing's been a disaster, and we've got to avoid it here by being tough.
But it is a direct parallel with what might happen here with these caravans and this, I mean, hundreds of thousands of people coming in. There is, you see a direct parallel.
It's exactly the same.
People were taught how to think, we're taught how to feel. We don't know how to think for ourselves. We don't know how to feel for ourselves. People say feel free, but they don't really want us to feel free. It's like we're mentally in prison. I like the word prison because we're choosing to be enslaved. You're choosing to enslave people's minds. You're choosing to not let the truth be free.
You are demanding the building of your own prison.
All day long, beating you over the head in their media, telling you what to believe, what to think, and what to buy. The table is tilted, folks. The game is rigged, and nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care.
This thing snuck up on us, and it's here now, and it wants to kill every man, woman, and child of us, and is not going to make deals, and is not going to play games.
Nothing in this world works the way you think it does. Nothing. Governments do not operate the way you think they do. Banks do not do what you think they do. The police department is not here for what you think it is. Nothing in your world works the way you think it does. There's a far higher, bigger picture going on the earth for at least 7,000 years of human history that we modern day people really just don't relate to. All we know is what we live with today, but never suspecting that the institutions of power, banking, education, the military-industrial complex of the world has taken hundreds of years to develop. On the opposite side with the pyramid, and very few people have ever wondered, why is there a pyramid on an American dollar bill? Well, beneath the pyramid, you will see on the pyramid, it says 1776 in Roman numerals. And the words beneath it, Novus Ordo Seclorum, which is in Latin, New Order of the World. So you've heard the Bushes talking about a new world order. Well, that's exactly what's happening. The whole world is being taken over into what is called a new world order, right here on the dollar bill.
All of these factors, from government surveillance and mind control to political correctness and open borders, are integral to the globalist agenda commonly known by its critics as the New World Order, and never has its existence been more evident or acknowledged than it is today. Since the release of the 1999 film The Matrix, the New World Order has also come to be alternatively referred to as The Matrix, as many perceive the film to be an accurate metaphor for the system of political, social, and psychological control that various aspects of society have over the masses, from political elections to television and movies and the educational system. Those ultimately behind the New World Order, or the Matrix, are believed to be part of a global satanic cult known as the Illuminati, who, through ritualistic blood sacrifice, including that of children, communicate with demonic entities who, in return for sacrifice, grant Illuminati leaders power over the visible world. For decades, this global satanic cult and its New World Order agenda has been recognized by the Christian prophecy community as evidence of Satan's plan to prepare the world for the Antichrist. However, the increasing exposure of the New World Order and its satanic architects in our time makes it seem as though Satan's plans are rapidly unraveling. Even more puzzling is that the New World Order is being exposed primarily by people who, from a truly biblical perspective, are as satanically indoctrinated as those behind the New World Order. It would appear then that Satan's house is divided. How could the great deceiver and leader of the fallen angels allow his own kingdom to be exposed by his very own? The simple answer is that he wouldn't. In the 12th chapter of the Gospel of Matthew, Christ confirms that Satan is not foolish enough to allow his own kingdom to fall through internal division. Satan himself is exposing the New World Order, a phenomenon which I call the Matrix disclosure, as part of a conspiracy far greater than anything ever conceived by the Illuminati.
You have been grievously deceived.
Had a Kundalini awakening that just blasted her open, and all of a sudden these little men in brown robes started appearing to her in her kitchen, her bedroom, her living room, and started showing her glimpses of the future.
And they never called it the cabal. They always called it the families. That was their term, 12 or 13 families.
And so I went and I read basically every book, fiction, nonfiction, Orwell written. I sent off for a literature textbook that was like 800 pages long of his letters, because he was high-level Fabian socialist in the club, and it was so horrifying to him what they were planning to do to people. He put it in fiction and wrote 1984 to warn the world. And when you hear this, you understand this is the actual plan, okay? Power is in tearing human minds to pieces and putting them together again in new shapes of your own choosing. Do you begin to see then what kind of world we're creating? It is the exact opposite of the stupid hedonistic utopias the old reformers imagined. A world of fear and treachery and torment. A world of trampling and being trampled upon. A world which will grow not less but more merciless as it refines itself. Progress in our world will be a progress towards more pain. The old civilizations claimed they were founded on love or justice. Ours is founded upon hatred. There will be no love except the love of Big Brother. In our world, there will be no emotions except fear, rage, triumph, and self-abasement. Everything else we shall destroy. Everything.
Conspiracy theorists like Alex Jones and David Icke often reference Orwell's and Huxley's novels as being an accurate depiction of the elite's endgame, creating a narrative regarding the future unfolding of events that, unfortunately, the majority of prophetically minded Christians have incorporated into their interpretations of the prophecies contained in the books of Daniel and Revelation. Consequently, many Christians have come to see Orwell's and Huxley's visions as the fulfillment of the prophecies of the Antichrist and his earthly kingdom, and have thus dedicated a great deal of time and effort to exposing the New World Order, believing it to be Satan's true endgame and preparing the world for the Antichrist. But there are several major problems with this view. For one, how could Orwell and Huxley, both of whom were vehemently opposed to the Bible and Christianity, have been given such accurate visions of biblical end times prophecy? if in fact the New World Order is the fulfillment of the books of Daniel and Revelation. Another major problem is that not only is belief in the existence of the New World Order becoming more and more widespread, but there seems to be a growing movement resisting New World Order tyranny. And perhaps most disturbing of all, from a biblical point of view, is that so many of those leading this resistance movement against the New World Order have an overtly anti-biblical agenda.
That's what I'm here to do, to help people to understand, to get back in tune with the divine nature of the universe. And I believe that that's going to be required very soon, because when all the systems break down and the Christians for the first time begin to think about it, where is Jesus? I would have thought he would be back by now.
There is not going to be a second coming of Christ.
There is no guy going to appear on a cloud to judge the human race or change the world.
The Christians think they're going to see a Messiah come in the clouds, whether he's, which is ridiculous. We have to stop looking for an external Messiah. What's going to save us is us. I've seen the Messiah, and the Messiah is us.
Very good.
Unfortunately, the vast majority of Christians who study the New World Order and directly connect it with end times prophecy have not entertained the possibility of spiritual deception with regard to how the Matrix has been exposed and presented by Orwell, Huxley, and the conspiracy media. The rapid rate at which the Illuminati's plans are being revealed, not only by critics and whistleblowers, but by the elite themselves, suggests that perhaps Big Brother's plans of global domination are a massive red herring that are being revealed for deceptive purposes, in order to serve an even grander agenda, one that has nothing at all to do with the New World Order or the so-called matrix of control. Numerous places in the Bible tell us that, unfortunately, the vast majority of humanity will not be saved because they have turned their hearts against God and refused to believe. As Christ tells us in Matthew chapter 7, narrow is the path that leads to life, and few find it. And the book of Revelation makes it clear that most of the world, having rejected God in their hearts, will be deceived by the Antichrist, the beast from the sea, and his false prophet, the beast from the earth. But if the vast majority of the world would be deceived by the Antichrist, then why are so many rebelling against the New World Order, if in fact it is where the true spirit of Antichrist is manifesting? And again, why are so many leaders of this growing rebellion movement opposed to the Bible and its vision of the future, believing it to be part of the very control system that enslaves us?
And this is what we have to resist. We have to resist this siren song of greed coming from the military-industrial complex and the sort of orthodox eschatologists, the people who would like to figure out how to precipitate an end of the world scenario, like these books Left Behind and all this sort of fundamentalism. Those are the guys running this program.
Yeah.
These classified programs are filled with really kooky people from the lunatic fringe of the religious extremists.
And he said, but right now I want to tell you one thing for sure. We in the FBI and your government does not see you as a threat. But if ever you're going to seriously be in trouble, let me tell you who your enemy will be. It's going to be the church. It's most likely going to be the Catholic Church, but it's going to be the church. Christian church will be your enemy, because the Christian church is the biggest organized criminal syndicate in the world. And we know it. The people who are actually running Christianity, both Protestant and Catholic, behind the scenes are the world's best criminals. And we know that. So he says, so when you're messing with the church, you're messing with underworld criminal syndicates. Money, politics, sex, drugs, the whole thing. They're running it. And we know that.
The concept of the false flag is well known in the conspiracy community, which claims that the globalists use false flag operations to further their agenda of control. A false flag is defined as, quote, an attack or other hostile action that obscures the identity of the participants carrying out the action, while implicating another group or nation as the perpetrator. The greatest example of this is 9/11. Conspiracy theorists believe that the American government attacked its own country and falsely blamed it on Muslim extremists to justify a phony war in the Middle East and increase government control. The formula is quite simple: problem, reaction, solution, also known as the Hegelian dialectic. A crisis is manufactured, a phony enemy is blamed for it, a response is demanded, and the solution is offered. A solution which seems to be for the greater good, but in reality only serves the agenda, the ones truly responsible for the initial crisis itself. The true enemy creates a situation whereby he becomes the hero of the people. As Rahm Emanuel once said,
"You never want a serious crisis to go to waste. And what I mean by that, it's an opportunity to do things that you think you could not do before."
While the concept of the false flag is easily understood within the physical realm, it never seems to be applied solely to the spirit realm. Though many believe the top New World Order elites are in direct communication with and ultimately working for some kind of spiritual or interdimensional beings, this narrative still includes human beings who are in full knowledge of what the spirits are ultimately planning. What I am suggesting, however, is the possibility of a massive false flag operation that has been carried out solely by deceptive spirits who have not brought any human, elite or otherwise, into the fold. What if Satan and his angels have been secretly carrying out their own false flag operation from which the entire human race has been completely compartmentalized? What if for centuries Satan has been creating a massive problem or crisis, a dark, menacing prison planet, ruled by a secret group of elite bloodlines bent on controlling the world with the intention of eventually exposing it in order to engender a reaction from mankind, who will then demand that something be done about it, at which point Satan will offer the solution. Just as Islamic terrorists were framed for 9/11, what if God and his angels were being framed for creating the New World Order? What if the New World Order itself was the real false flag operation, and Satan was now exposing it in order to paint the God of the Bible as the ultimate enemy of mankind, in order to justify an entirely different kind of war over the minds and souls of the human race?
What is that where they announce world government in hundreds of newspapers, but then if you talk about it, the Southern Poverty Law Center and ADL say you must be a terrorist? I mean, this is propaganda I would design, David, to wake people up against me.
A passage in 2 Thessalonians gives us a perfect picture of the sort of mindset that will encompass the world once the Antichrist has finally been revealed. 2 Thessalonians 2:9-12 reads, "The coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders, and with all unrighteous deception among those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this reason, God will send them strong delusion, that they should believe the lie, that they all may be condemned who did not believe the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness." This passage clearly tells us that once the Antichrist arrives, mankind will be deluded by a lie. And when we understand the biblical story as a whole, it becomes quite clear just what this lie is. According to the book of Genesis, the fall of man came as a result of believing the lie, "Ye shall be as gods," spoken by that serpent of old, Satan, who deceives the whole world. From the very beginning of human history, Satan's goal has been to convince man that he is God. It's therefore reasonable to assume that through the Antichrist, Satan will seek to consummate the work he started all the way back in the Garden of Eden by initiating mankind into the religion of human divinity. This is true Satanism or Luciferianism, not participation in ritualistic blood sacrifice or the literal worship of the devil, but simply believing that one is on equal footing with the Creator. The lie that man is divine is, therefore, the true essence of the Antichrist agenda, the real Luciferian philosophy, which ultimately aims at convincing mankind that it is godlike, powerful, without sin or blemish, inherently free, and capable of transcending to higher levels of being. These ideals, however, are completely at odds with the agenda of the New World Order and Illuminati, whose goal, as we are told over and over again by the conspiracy media, is to disempower and enslave us. This is why they poison our food and water, give us diseases and cancer, control our minds through the media, entertainment, consumerism, and politics. How then can the New World Order and the Antichrist agendas be one and the same? The simple answer is they aren't. Satan may see mankind as nothing but pawns to manipulate, but subjugation through force is not his way. Rather, Satan's MO is to spread spiritually deadly messages disguised as positivity or empowerment, which feed into man's hubris, giving him delusions of grandeur. Satan is not interested in turning mankind into slaves. What he wants is a human race blinded from the light of the gospel, thoroughly convinced that it is God and in no need of a savior but themselves, which, interestingly, is the very message underlying the New World Order resistance movement, which is being spearheaded by the conspiracy and New Age communities.
Almost any time that we create a religion, we're in a huge mess. Because ultimately, all the great teachers were trying to steer us towards experiential knowing rather than worshiping a book, which is fundamentally flawed as soon as you write it down. And I really want to imbue that to others, this notion that you are the one you're looking for. You are your savior, because the experience of omniscient awareness that we all have, we are the awareness of the universe. And when we become inspired, we touch parts of that, the most basic fundamental truths that you will find in meditation. That's what we call ageless wisdom, the knowledge that just downloads to you when you go into a state of meditation.
The lie that man is God is the root of what are known as the ageless wisdom or mystery school teachings, which have been the basis of Eastern mystical religions such as Buddhism and Hinduism, as well as the various branches of Western esotericism and occultism, including Platonism, Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, and Theosophy. In recent decades, these teachings have been disseminated on an unprecedented scale through the New Age movement. Though many Christian prophecy researchers have portrayed the New Age as part of the larger New World Order agenda, the evidence simply does not support this notion. Believing themselves to be workers of light, New Agers abhor the so-called works of darkness, and from their perspective, there is nothing darker or more sinister than the New World Order agenda and its Illuminati architects. Interestingly, the subject of the Illuminati and their global conspiracy is a frequent topic of messages communicated by spirits through channeling, a process popular within the New Age, whereby a person opens themselves up to become a direct conduit of one or more spiritual entities, who speak through the person telepathically, communicating whatever messages or spiritual teachings the entities wish to convey. Those who participate in these spiritual collaborations are easy targets for deception, which is why this practice is explicitly condemned in the Bible. Masquerading as benevolent spirits or extraterrestrials, satanic entities quite frequently speak of the Illuminati and their dark plans, in an apparent attempt to warn humanity of their global conspiracy.
It doesn't matter who you speak to. It doesn't matter even speaking to lovely intuitive sources in the other world. I can say without exception, all of them have said, even if they don't choose to go into it, yes, there are forces that are interfering with the people of your planet. And that goes without exception. In every intuitive source, every channeler we featured on Gaia have privately, when I've spoken to them, said, they're being said, yes, you are being interfered with. Your job is to break that.
The reason people feel so isolated and the reason that people are so in pain is because of the fragmented humanity that they are existing in. Humanity has been designed to connect and to be a tribe. And yet, through the evolution process and through the control of certain forces, you would call them government, although we would argue that what you see presented as your government is not actually the government. It is the display people for the government.
What is your exact description when you're saying for the government, the forces that control?
We would say that this is clear everywhere you go, as in often what you perceive as the person in charge is not in charge. So when we say there are governing bodies behind your government, we mean exactly that. There are people who have a certain amount of control regarding the resources and the freedoms on this planet, and some of those people, not all, but some of those people have very dark agendas.
In her book, The Robes, a Book of Coming Changes, Penny Kelly details the seemingly prophetic information revealed to her by a group of extraterrestrials. known simply as the Robes, who visited her in person multiple times in the 1980s. These beings imparted not only New Age wisdom about the coming expansion of consciousness on planet Earth, but also how in the coming decades, the world would begin moving in a very dark direction at the hands of a few very powerful and corrupt families.
Penny was an unemployed mother with 4 children on welfare, had a Kundalini awakening that just blasted her open. And all of a sudden, these little men in brown robes started appearing to her in her kitchen, her bedroom, her living room, and started showing her glimpses of the future.
I saw the 12 or 13 families who were members of the cabal, and they never called it the cabal. They always called it the families. That was their term, 12 or 13 families. I saw that it was mostly a business arrangement, and that there were some awful things that were happening. I might cry if I have to talk about them. They were so terrible. And what they pointed out was that the families, the cabal families, would become a huge obstacle to change. They would distract people with music, with entertainment, with food, with poor food especially, with all sorts of meaningless drivel, and people would go for that, and they would not focus on the reason they were here, which was to develop their consciousness.
For years, New World Order researchers have agreed that the highest echelon of the Illuminati consists of 13 specific families, each with their own special bloodlines. Through the work of researchers like Fritz Springmeier, the Christian prophecy community has largely embraced this revelation about the Illuminati families, believing it to be the blueprint for Satan's true endgame. However, the messages Penny Kelly received from these entities called the Robes nearly 40 years ago, as well as many other channeled messages received from supposedly benevolent spirits and ETs assisting in the elevation of humanity's consciousness, raised the disturbing possibility that the Illuminati's exposure is not the work of God, but of Satan. That the Illuminati are so frequently exposed by satanic spirits themselves should raise a serious red flag regarding the legitimacy of the New World Order as Satan's true endgame. For why would Satan directly reveal his ultimate plans to so many of those he clearly intends to deceive? What this and similar ET and spiritual encounters suggest is that, for some reason, in addition to humanity's indoctrination into the New Age worldview, Satan also finds it of the utmost importance that mankind learn of the Illuminati and their dark agenda against the human race, which again suggests the likelihood that the New World Order itself is a massive false flag.
We're talking about a worldwide fraternal organization that is powerful enough, old enough, and wise enough to operate behind all governments in the world, behind fraternal institutions, monetary systems in the world, and yes, they are in fact connected.
Mrs. Blavatsky, she's...
Helena Petrovna Blavatsky?
Right.
Yes. Yes, I have all of her works.
You have?
Yes.
Well, that's why... Yes.
I think her best work was Isis Unveiled, Part 2, which is theology.
Right. Science.
And that was an exceptional work. I think that Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, the Russian mystic, was a very wise and perceptive lady, and she had some very profound knowledge.
Helena Blavatsky and Alice Bailey, regarded as the founding mothers of the New Age movement, are often cited in New World Order research and documentaries as being part of the Illuminati agenda. However, their writings, which, like Penny Kelly's The Robes, were also the products of direct contact with spirits, lack any kind of program or support for a global takeover by the world's elite. Alice Bailey in particular expressed a strong distaste for totalitarianism. In her book, Problems of Humanity, she explained that one of the major problems humanity faced was a global network of powerful people who sought to keep the human race living in fear, hatred, and a constant state of war. She wrote, "The cause of all world unrest, of the world wars which have wrecked humanity and the widespread misery upon our planet, can largely be attributed to a selfish group with materialistic purposes who have for centuries exploited the masses and used the labor of mankind for their selfish ends. The responsibility for the widespread misery to be found today in every country in the world lies predominantly at the door of certain major interrelated groups of businessmen, bankers, executives of international cartels, monopolies, trusts and organizations, and directors of huge corporations who work for corporate or personal gain. Exploitation of manpower, the manipulation of the major planetary resources, and the promotion of war for private or business profit are characteristic of their methods. They form an international group, closely related, working in complete unity of idea and intention, and knowing and understanding each other. They have worked together before and through the entire period of the Second World War, through interlocking directorates, under false names, and through deceptive organizations. They have stood behind governments and politicians. They have controlled the electorate. They have financed the world businesses and controlled oil, coal, power, light, and transportation. They control publicly or sub rosa, i.e. in secret, the world's banking accounts. They are again organized and renewing their methods. Their goals remain unchanged. Their international relationships remain unbroken. They constitute the greatest menace mankind faces today. They control politics. They buy prominent men in every nation. They ensure silence through threat, cash, and fear. They amass wealth and buy a spurious popularity through philanthropic enterprise. Their families live soft and easy lives and seldom know the meaning of God-ordained work. Although the Christian prophecy community typically believes Bailey was an integral part of the New World Order, her own words paint a very different picture. As we have just seen, Alice Bailey herself, High Priestess of the New Age, believed that most of the world's problems could be traced to a shadowy group of master puppeteers conspiring behind the scenes, creating the kind of world that suited their own greedy interests, a network of elites who perfectly fit the description of the Illuminati. Thus, Alice Bailey was not aligned with the Illuminati, as many have assumed, but rather was working in direct opposition to them. She believed herself to be a worker of light, fulfilling the plan of the Ascended Masters or Great White Brotherhood. To this end, Bailey warned the world of the Illuminati, who were aligned with the Dark Brotherhood, and of their evil plans for global domination. Therefore, in addition to being the mother of the New Age movement, Alice Bailey may also rightly be viewed as the mother of conspiracy theory, which is a direct offshoot of the New Age movement. The 1960s encapsulated the spirit of Alice Bailey's teachings and demonstrated the intimate connection between the New Age and conspiracy theory, both of which came into public view in the 60s. It was no accident that the anti-government culture of the 60s was dominated by New Age youth movements, and that the decade of the hippies was the same decade that saw the first usage of the term conspiracy theory, used in reference to alternative views of the Kennedy assassination. The anti-elitist conspiratorial attitude of the Aquarian flower children was perhaps best epitomized by Beatles member John Lennon, whose diatribe against the elite and calls for world peace are still famous among today's New Age conspiracy community.
I think all our society is run by insane people for insane objectives, and we're being run by maniacs for maniacal ends. You know, if anybody can put on paper what our government and the American government, etc., and the Russian, Chinese, what they are actually trying to do, you know, and what they think they're doing, I'd be very pleased to know what they think they're doing. I think they're all insane. You know, but I'm liable to be put away as insane for expressing that. You know, that's what's insane about it.
Since the 1960s, the conspiracy and New Age communities, working together, have developed a cohesive and inspiring narrative informing people about the dark hidden forces controlling the world and the spiritual means of overcoming them. Far from being an exception to the rule, Alice Bailey's deep-seated hatred for the secret elite of the world, conspiring against mankind, seems to be a definitive characteristic of the Aquarian spirit. Indeed, New Age spirituality and conspiracy theory are virtually incapable of existing independently of one another, as they seem to be partners in a joint Aquarian movement, with conspiracy theory revealing to us the nature of our enslavement and New Age spirituality providing the means of liberation.
Humanity is magic. Humanity can literally reach to the stars and beyond. The development of our species to this point is only the larval stage. And we're now going into a phase where we're literally in a cocoon and about to metamorphosize into something else. We can't even imagine our full potential, that you will bloom and that you will literally accelerate towards a higher level of enlightenment.
In the book, you refer to the destruction of the Twin Towers in New York, 9/11, as what some people say looked like a controlled explosion. And one might read that as you giving some credence to conspiracy theories.
You can read the book in whatever manner you would like to.
Do you believe that the Twin Towers were destroyed by forces of the American government or similar?
You have to remain open-minded to any kind of possibility. I think that there's an infinite creative force that generates all consciousness and all matter, and we are all connected. And if you align yourself with this infinite creative force, then you can be positive and you can be beautiful. I don't think it's a personal God. I don't believe in any particular doctrine or dogma, only that humanity is connected.
The inseparability of New Age spirituality and conspiracy theory can be explained by their shared spiritual heritage, for they are not separate realms of thought, but merely different branches on the same mystery school tree. The idea that mankind is imprisoned on Earth by dark forces is one of the key concepts of the mystery school teachings, and it's given special emphasis within an ancient form of occultism known as Gnosticism. The Gnostics taught that humanity was imprisoned in a fake, illusory reality created by a group of nefarious beings called archons, who purposely kept mankind disconnected from its true divine heritage in order to feed off its negative emotional energy, a concept that would be integrated into the plot of the Hollywood film The Matrix.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Matrix.
Do you want to know what it is? It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth.
What truth?
That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind.
And they're really literally moving us step by grade into a matrix. We live in a matrix. We live in a cybernetic world that to a great extent is the manifestation of a higher dimensional reality of being that transcends our physical body.
Consciousness is in danger of being trapped, enmeshed in a sticky web of a low vibrational matrix, and millions and millions and millions and millions of souls are stuck in that web right now, and it is absolutely horrible. All they do is dominate and manipulate our world, the 3D world, and the matrix part of that world.
You've got to keep them in the perceptual box, and that's what this matrix does.
Like all branches of the mystery school tradition, Gnosticism maintains that all forms of life are divine manifestations of the Source, connected with God in like manner to drops of water in the ocean. And the Gnostics in particular had believed that for thousands of years, the archons, jealous of humanity's divine spark, have been suppressing the knowledge of our true spiritual potential, lest we rise above them and defeat them. Ancient Gnosticism, therefore, was the original conspiracy theory. And interestingly, this ancient conspiracy theory claimed that the one behind it all, the evil god of this world conspiring against mankind, was not the biblical Satan, but the biblical God, Jehovah or Yahweh, the vengeful God of the Old Testament who created the Garden of Eden, led the Israelites out of Egypt, and established the nation of Israel. Consequently, the Gnostics have historically viewed the serpent or Lucifer not as the devil responsible for mankind's fall, but the Savior responsible for mankind's salvation, as it was he who offered the gift of enlightenment to Adam and Eve, thereby awakening their inner divine light, which the evil and jealous Jehovah or Yahweh wanted to suppress. Therefore, if the New World Order is actually a massive false flag operation, as I have suggested, Gnosticism provides the spiritual basis for blaming it on the God of the Bible. And as today's conspiracy narrative demonstrates, this seems to be exactly what's happening.
We don't intend to spend a whole lot of time on the Illuminati, just enough to familiarize yourself if you've never heard of the organization. It was founded in 1776 in the south of Germany by a man named Adam Weishaupt. He formulated his plans in relation to the House of Rothschild in England, Germany, France, Italy. The Rothschild banking dynasty behind the governments of Europe hired Adam Weishaupt to formulate a plan for the world at that time to accomplish certain goals for those in power. That plan came to be known as the Illuminati plan. Here we have a book called The Teachings of Freemasonry. And we'll find that on the book of Teachings of Freemasonry, you have the Jewish Star of David, because in fact, Freemasonry is Jewish. The Pope's headdress, the papal headdress, goes back to an ancient Jewish headdress. And of course, the Pope wears the yarmulke, and so does the cardinals wear the yarmulke. But in particular, the Pope's headdress is shown here as Freemasonic. This is from a Freemasonic research book, a volume on Freemasonry and the garb of Freemasons. And here we had one Freemason with the Jewish breastplate and the papal headdress. Even the Liberty Bell, the symbol of liberty, an equal Liberty Bell, identical with the same crack, is found in Moscow. It's a very famous Liberty Bell of Moscow with the same crack. It becomes known as a symbol, the symbol of the Brotherhood of the Bell. Bel being B-E-L, the ancient god in the Mesopotamian Valley, being the one that we call Beelzebub or Belteshazzar or Yahweh. Jehovah's kingdom on earth is nothing more than a Masonic kingdom.
Like the Gnostics of old, today's leading conspiracy theorists, many of whom openly admit their Gnostic allegiance, claim that the archons, led by the God of the Old Testament, Yahweh, have been mentally and spiritually enslaving humanity for centuries, if not millennia, by keeping it imprisoned in a fake, simulated version of reality, just like the one portrayed in the film The Matrix. And, just like the ancient Gnostics, conspiracy theorists insist that the archons and their human minions, the Illuminati, have been suppressing secret knowledge. This secret knowledge, supposedly kept hidden from us by the global elite, just so happens to be the very same knowledge that the serpent deceived Eve into believing that God was keeping from her. While conspiracy theorists often condemn the so-called occult agenda of the Illuminati, conspiracy theorists themselves are fulfilling the true occult agenda, one much greater and more deceptive than the New World Order. Occult simply means hidden or secret, and just like the serpent in the Garden of Eden, the New Age conspiracy community is deceiving mankind into believing that a great secret has been kept from us, that we are God.
Humans are still prisoners. We're still trapped. So this whole battle that's been fought above the earth and on the earth and under the earth and energetically through the minds of people, are literally to break enslavement. because humans are enslaved. But the system has been going so long and is so clever that the vast majority of people don't understand what they are and how they're being trapped and how they're being tricked and how they're being lied to.
People really don't know what kind of a being they are. And because of that, which is in many cases kept purposely away from them, they're manipulated. Your birthright's being stolen away from you, just like the story of Jacob and Esau. It's being stolen away from people. And the problem is it's being stolen away primarily to tell them things that they are not. We are actually if you want to call it the incarnation of the I am that said, let there be light in the universe, as human beings in this world. And there's other beings of other types that are across the cosmos that are incarnations of the same I am.
This is the great secret. And the great evil of the New World Order engineers is that they fully understand this primal rule. And they have made the greedy, selfish decision to keep these great truths from humanity that would fulfill and empower our species. They are afraid of you finding your true potential and power, because when you become enlightened and awakened and expand your horizons, you threaten their monopoly of power and control.
The biggest secret that the people must not realize, it's not this data about the technology or the visitors or the existence of the visitors. It's our own power. This is the biggest
It's
secret.
our own power, exactly.
It's our own power that we must not realize, because the greater secret is who we are, what we can do, what we can be. And they've got to keep us in our box. Otherwise, their game is over.
They don't want us to know about our co-creative conscious abilities, because they use those as a tool against us. So if by us liberating our consciousness, we are taking away a tool that negative forces use to enslave us.
We come into contact with a body of information that has been kept secret for thousands and thousands of years. And the reason why is that with this information comes the potential for what is called apotheosis. Apotheosis means human becomes God, because they believe themselves to be gods where no one else is. And so what happens is they do not want us to know this, because if we knew that the pyramid could bring us to a godlike state, then we would start building them and we'd start using them, and they don't want us to have the technology. So they flaunt it right in front of you. They put it on the dollar bill.
We now have a clear picture of the larger agenda which the grand false flag operation known as the New World Order is meant to serve. The New World Order itself is the problem which Satan created and is now exposing in order to force a reaction from humanity, who will then demand that something be done about it. The revelation or disclosure of the great secret, the satanic lie that man is God, the great secret that has been hidden from us by the Illuminati and their Archon masters. By manufacturing a massive conspiracy to keep the knowledge that man is God's secret, Satan has not only made his lie seem attractive, but true. As it is often said, the cover-up is worse than the crime. People, typically those in power, cover up what they don't want the public to know. And the only reason there is a cover-up is because there is something to hide. Satan has brilliantly applied this concept, what might be called the cover-up effect, to the lie that man is God. For nothing will convince humanity more that it truly is God than the shocking revelation that a global conspiracy has been suppressing this knowledge for centuries. For why would so many powerful people over the course of so many generations go to such great lengths to suppress something that wasn't true? Once the great secret of man's divinity has finally been revealed, mankind will then be able to awaken to the truth and escape the global prison created by the Archons. Therefore, the true satanic agenda preparing the world for the arrival of the biblical Antichrist is not a global prison, but a global prison break. It is not the Matrix, but the escape from the Matrix.
What we will tell you is that those dark agendas are crumbling from the inside and have been for the past several years. So even as darker actions are tried to be achieved on this planet, they are being, shall we say, dismantled energetically from forces that none of you can see.
The greatest clue to this agenda can be found in Alice Bailey's book, A Treatise on White Magic, a comprehensive guide to the 15 rules of white magic and the tasks which all New Age disciples must perform in order to be considered true white magicians. According to Bailey, the most important task of all was assisting in the release of what she called the prisoners of the planet, who were being held captive by the black magicians. And given her diatribe against an international group of businessmen, bankers, and corporations working in unison behind the scenes, it's quite clear that Bailey's black magician prison wardens are one and the same with the Illuminati of today's conspiracy theory narrative, and that the New World Order is the prison from which humanity must be released by the white magicians, the human counterparts of the Ascended Masters or Great White Brotherhood. The release of Earth's prisoners is an integral part of the great divine plan, which Bailey claimed was ultimately being overseen by the leader of the Ascended Masters, Sanat Kumara, who Bailey referred to as the Lord of the World, which is the same title given to Satan in the Bible, who is also described as the great deceiver who masquerades as an angel of light. The fulfillment of the divine plan through the release of Earth's prisoners is precisely the purpose which Alex Jones, David Icke, Jordan Maxwell, David Wilcock, and the rest of the New Age conspiracy community is serving. As illumined white magicians, they are leading a Gnostic rebellion against the black magicians controlling the planet, telling us that in order to rise above the dark forces, we must collectively raise our consciousness. Bailey's words reveal the truly occult nature of conspiracy theory and suggest that this growing New Age rebellion against the New World Order is, in reality, an occult civil war between white and black magic. And by exposing the black magic elites and spreading the lie that man is God, the white magicians are carrying out Bailey's instructions, effecting the release of the planet's prisoners from the Matrix, and paving the way for humanity's spiritual ascension.
George Humphrey, my friend, has written the new book that just came out, available at Amazon.com, Life, Love, Joy, A Story of Humans' Origins, the Polarity of Present Choices, and Our Unrealized Potential. And everything the globalists do is about suppressing our potential. And George's such a sweetheart. He's selling this book at cost, but it's a powerful book. I just started reading it. Everything that social engineers do is about suppressing human potential. Everything they do is about cutting off resources. Everything they do is about telling us we're ugly, we're bad, we're no good, when we're not. Again, we're fallen because we are bought into this system. And this system's doing everything it can from keeping us from ascending.
Absolutely. There is more energy coming into our solar system. This is not some new age theory. It's just a fact, is that the different polarities, what we call the dark and the light, the yin and yang, are getting more powerful. The dark is getting darker and the light's getting brighter. And the point is that each and every one of us as human beings have a choice. We can continue to be controlled by the cultural zeitgeist, which is like the Hunger Games, and being controlled by the synthetic manipulation. You, perhaps myself, many of the people listening, we've broken out of what's called the cultural zeitgeist, the synthetic matrix, and we are more connected with our morphogenic field and connected with the universal, which is universal law, natural law, and what we've really
broken out of the control paradigm.
Yes, and we are able, if we continue to keep going, to I don't want to get too esoteric here, but to activate the energy systems within our body, which are called chakras, and to become clearer and more aware and more full of light and more self-powerful. We have the DNA to become just incredible beings of multidimensional consciousness, to bring love and consciousness and do the right thing.
The Pentagon says we must stop independent, self-empowered individuals. The threat, they said, was independently conscious individuals outside of the control grid.
Of course it is.
They actually admit they're scared of that.
Of course it is, because it's all about power.
This is why the outward expression of the manipulation, human society and what goes on there, should be communicated, and for me has to be communicated with the nature of reality and the nature of who we are, because then we can not only see how this plays out, but how it can unplay out. We have given our minds away to a perceptual program that gives us a particular perception of reality and a particular perception of self. We have the ability to take power over that program back anytime we choose. But the program is constantly telling us we don't have that power because it's self-preserving itself. And what happens when people so-called wake up, which means wake up from the program or start to? I am little me becomes I am infinite me, and therefore the amount of possibility and probability that we are interacting with massively expands. Yes. So what you manifest in the feedback loop of perception becomes experience reality dramatically changes. When you expand your awareness beyond the program, beyond the postage stamp, as I call it, you're now tapping into levels of reality that are beyond the program. Who is the I? Are you little me I, in which case you will live a little me life? Or are you infinite me I, in which case your life will be dramatically different? Because possibility is only what we believe it to be. Change your perception, change your life, because your life is your perception. We take our perception back, we take our lives back.
That is what people need to understand loud and clear. They do have that power. They need to understand how to identify the actual I, not the little me, but the real true self. And so they can start aligning with that and break free of this matrix.
In order to escape the matrix, humanity must first believe it is living in a matrix. This is the purpose of the matrix disclosure, to convince mankind of 3 beliefs. First, that the New World Order or control matrix is real. Second, that our reality is an illusion or dream from which we must awaken, a view which is increasingly being embraced by mainstream scientists, philosophers, and technological innovators. And thirdly, that each of us is an eternal being, an individual expression of the universal God consciousness. Once mankind accepts these 3 beliefs, it will awaken from the dream world or the great illusion, destroy the matrix, overthrow its architects, and usher in a false golden age on the earth, fulfilling Paul's words, "For when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them, as labor pains upon a pregnant woman, and they shall not escape." This false age of peace and safety will be predicated on the false belief that evil and darkness have finally been defeated, and that the great secret of man's true godlike potential has finally been revealed. The stage will then be set for the arrival of the biblical Antichrist, who will present himself not as a political leader thirsty for power, but as a spiritual teacher eager to serve mankind and lead it into a more peaceful, democratic, and enlightened future, free from all the evil, corruption, and darkness of the old world. He will not be the tyrannical head of the New World Order, but mankind's savior from it, like Neo in The Matrix or Luke Skywalker in the original Star Wars trilogy, a concept which perfectly coincides with the Gnostic belief in the serpent being man's liberator from the Garden of Eden, the original Matrix.
There seems to be a divine mandate in heaven that in all periods of darkness, when there seems to be darkness encroaching on the human family, that the spirit of the universe calls out individual people and your spirit is moved to do something to help your fellow man, to be a teacher. And so there have always been teachers who have been called in the last and final parts of a dark time on the earth where the universe puts it into certain people's hearts to be like an avatar, to be like a teacher. And it's true. Every time the world is heading into darkness, it seems like God or the divine presence in the universe moves certain people in their heart to stand up against the darkness and help their fellow man, like the scripture says, just carry even one candle will light a darkened world. So I believe that there is something to this idea that God raises up individuals to enlighten his fellow man at, in dark periods of history.
It is now time for the greatest false flag operation in history to enter its final stages. Satan has spent centuries creating the problem, the New World Order, and it's now time to expose it, force a reaction, offer the solution, and falsely blame it all on the God of the Bible, who, through religions like Christianity, has sought to control mankind by indoctrinating it with a depraved, sinful view of itself. As a result of this propaganda, true believers in Christ will be seen as being part of the dark globalist agenda. For believing that they are saved by the blood of Christ, believers are increasingly being perceived as satanic, brainwashed by the same religion of blood sacrifice practiced by the Illuminati. This narrative will provide the perfect justification for the persecution of Christians, which the Bible tells us will reach its peak in the last days. Through the Matrix disclosure, Satan is reenacting his initial encounter with Eve on a massive worldwide scale, deceiving all of mankind into thinking that a great secret has been kept from us, and that we must eat the apple or take the red pill in order to realize the truth, that we are all God, and that Yahweh or Jehovah is the real devil or Satan, mankind's true adversary, who, ever since the Garden of Eden, has been trying to keep us enslaved in a false reality in order to keep us from realizing who we truly are.
Now I'm going to get into the great tree of knowledge and the wisdom that has been denied us by someone who does not want us to have this knowledge. About 3,600 years ago, the earth was invaded by something called the archons. And what these archons are is they do not possess the divine essence that we possess. And they're really jealous of us for that. And so they're creating a world, this is what the Nag Hammadi says, a simulated world all around us. It's all simulated. And the point of the archons, according to Nag Hammadi, is to make you think that their reality is the reality, not the real reality.
Let's look at what the Gnostic writings from 2,000 years ago say about these archons, that they are able to create something that they call HAL, H-A-L, which translates as, wait for it, virtual realities.
There is an energy on this planet called the archons, it's called the black goo, whatever you want to call it.
Once you understand what is going on here, you can free yourself of the archons. And I believe the archons are here. And I believe they're everywhere. And I think they are a virus. I think they get inside of us. And they make us think that the fake world is real. That's the archons. They don't want us to find out what's going on. The Gnostics believed that there was a false god. And this false god was trying to convince us that we were nothing.
They talk about the demiurge being a fake god that created the physical material reality that we perceive, and they relate this to the Judeo-Christian Yahweh Jehovah God. They also relate it in effect to what people call Satan or the devil as well.
Being the one that we call Beelzebub or Belteshazzar or Yahweh.
So I suspect that's who told us we can't have the fruit of the tree of knowledge. This is what they don't want you to know, because that means you're part of God. You're part of the creative essence, okay? And these archons don't want you to know this.
You are the voice in this plane of existence of the Creator God. The spirit in you is not a separate spirit. It is the I am.
We as human beings represent the highest vibration of potential vibration of universal consciousness.
God is experiencing consciousness through all of us, and we are it. We are God.
We are all powerful. We are consciousness. We are awareness. We are a point of attention within the great infinite forever. And that's what the conspiracy wants us to forget, that we are the ocean. They want us to think we're just the droplet, the little me. That's why the only way this world is going to change, this reality is going to change, is when there is a consciousness shift, an expansion of consciousness beyond time and space, beyond the bounds of time and space. And there is the gateway to that this system wants to shut. What we have been subjected to, not just these generations, but for generations untold, is a gigantic hoax. A hoax that has sold us a fake reality, a fake version of how we should live our lives, and thus they have enslaved infinite awareness in a perception of little me. The fascist global state is not coming because we're not freaking having it anymore. And we are not any longer going to be manipulated into manifesting our own enslavement.
This is the animating contest of liberty. This fight is meant to grow your muscles culturally, spiritually, intellectually, to be even stronger, to be able to deal with the incredible developments that humans are about to have. This is the ascension of humanity that's happening right now, and the globals are trying to suppress it.
The way out of this is through our co-creative conscious abilities and waking up.
As we wake people up, they then manifest what's always been there. We need to see through this mirage, see through the illusion. Wake up, wake up, wake up.
Once we wake up and turn our attention to them, they're done for.
When we're aware, game over. Because then humans are going next level. We're designed to defeat this.
We don't want your culture anymore. We don't want your wars. We don't want anything that you're giving us. We're done with you. That's what's really going on here. The hippie movement was the beginning of this. And now it's our turn to lead the way. And that is really the mission, I think, of our generation. My generation is not to be the ones who survive the golden age, but be the ones who lead the next generation into this knowledge so that they can find out what's going on.
For the wave of consciousness and the growth of what you refer to as the golden age on this planet has to come to pass. There is no way around it.
Do we believe the Archon's BS story that this is a much better place, this imitated world that they built for us? And I say it isn't. I say we need to get back to the garden.
A new age has begun. An age of freedom.
World events are concentrating people's minds on the fact that the world isn't like they thought it was, and they don't like the way the world's going. They feel uneasy about it, and that has got people to, in greater numbers, to look at what I've written in the past, which is basically saying the world that we have now and we're going deeper into is the one that's been planned all along.
And now you arrive in certain countries in the world and the mainstream media comes out to greet you because what you have had to say over time has borne out to be true.
The elites that are in positions of power in Hollywood, Washington, D.C., governments across the world are involved in pedophilia, Satanism, and the trafficking of children.
Stephen Colbert is a pedophile.
Would you describe yourself as a conspiracy theorist?
Well, I look at what officialdom tells us is happening and check it out. And if you can back that up with information, it's not a theory. There is a network that works through government agencies, through organizations like the CIA, etc., to push an agenda on the world, which is unfolding by the day. My books in the 1990s laid out what this agenda was, and those books are now being read on the television news in changes in society and laws coming in.
Because especially for someone like you who's into conspiracy theories and,
I'm more like into the Rothschild family, the Illuminati. I'm into that.
But they do some of that stuff. Like one of the most recent episodes that I saw was they went against all the guys that said the moon landing didn't exist.
Did it happen?
Of course.
What do you mean, of course?
Of course the moon landing happened.
Bill, it happened. You actually are posing the concept that the moon landing possibly didn't happen?
I'm asking it.
Are you one of the people that think 9/11 could have been an inside job?
Absolutely. Are you one of those guys who just watches TV and just feels like they're just telling you the truth?
It was an inside job, and it has justified, not really, but it's been used to justify fantastic increases in surveillance and control, all based on a bloody lie.
Did you see the video of Tower 7 just going falls at free fall speed? That's got to be a little suspicious, right? A red flag got to come up.
The reason we left is because there simply wasn't enough support for 9/11 truth at that time.
Right.
But now there is. It's growing.
15 years ago, it was a conspiracy theory that the Catholic Church had any pedophilia.
Right.
Now we know
Yeah.
30% were doing it. We now know the old Pope had to step down, was blackmailed with info about other high-level priests by the new guy that came in. And so what you're beginning to see is the beginning of all the pedophilia coming out as they roll up the procurers that grab your kids out of backyards or that go out as social workers and get the kids or whatever. That's why you've seen arrests in Pennsylvania, arrests in L.A.
I haven't seen these arrests. Who's getting arrested?
It's just now breaking, and it's big institutionalized.
474 arrests, 28 sexually exploited children rescued during statewide human traffic operation.
They're getting down now.
Holy shit.
Takeover, right?
Holy shit. But look at the numbers there.
The elites of this world, the elites that are in positions of power in Hollywood, Washington, D.C., governments across the world are involved in pedophilia, Satanism, and the trafficking of children.
Just got a new book out called Phantom Self, and I'm going on a world tour all over the world. And that shows how many people are looking at this.
As in before you go.
As the shadow of Big Brother looms ever larger, so has the growing disillusionment with its various state-sponsored media outlets, such as ABC, NBC, and CNN, whose viewership has dropped radically in recent years as a result of their blatant bias and agenda-driven broadcasting. Consequently, many have abandoned the mainstream media as a legitimate source of news, a development which some perceive as a sign that mankind is beginning to wake up to the New World Order and fight back against the Matrix. One of the biggest causes of the mainstream media's fall has been the crusade against fake news, spearheaded by President Donald Trump.
I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you state categorically?
You are fake news.
Sir,
go ahead.
Can you state categorically that nobody... A few days ago, I called the fake news the enemy of the people, and they are. They are the enemy of the people.
One story has monopolized President Trump's time in office like no other, especially on CNN. Russia. In fact, since the inauguration, CNN has mentioned Russia on their air nearly 16,000 times. So we sent our undercover reporters inside CNN to understand why.
Then why is CNN constantly like Russia this, Russia that?
Because it's ratings. Because it's ratings? Our ratings are incredible right now.
In the month of May, CNN's ratings were significantly higher than they were the year before. The Russia story and Trump have made CNN millions.
He said, good job, everybody, covering the climate accords. But we're done with it. Let's get back to Russia.
The CEO?
Yeah.
So Trump's good for business, you're saying?
Trump is good for business right now.
But honestly, you think the whole Russia is just like bull?
Could be bull. I mean, it's mostly bull right now. Like, we don't have any big giant proof. And so I think the president is probably right to say, like, look, you are witch hunting me. Like, you have no smoking gun. You have no real proof.
No real proof, he says, and that speaks volumes about today's mainstream media. Bonifield says CNN loves the Russia story not because it's true, but because people want it to be true. They're feeding their audience a false narrative in order to get ratings. Their enthusiasm to report false news is getting the better of them. On Saturday, CNN imposed strict internal restrictions on all future Russia stories after they had to delete and retract a story that was poorly sourced. And yesterday, 3 CNN staffers resigned, victims of fake news. The American people are fed up with fake news.
Who would have imagined just a year ago that we'd be watching the literal fall of CNN in real time, caught red-handed, manufacturing the fake Russia election narrative in their own words to make money and to generate ratings at the expense of endangering everyone with nuclear war. And on a daily basis, more shoes drop, more dominoes fall, not just at CNN, but at MSNBC, at ABC, at NBC. Megyn Kelly's ratings continue to drop like a stone because the American people are completely breaking with the old order, with the establishment.
They have been fake news for a long time. They've been covering me in a very dishonest way. We don't want fake news.
The Russia thing is just a big nothing, bro. Really?
Get out of the mind state that the mainstream media is the arbiter of truth, because they're not. They're trying to control your mind, and they will admit it. They have admitted it on camera. They said that's our job. What's her name? Brzezinski, Mika?
He's trying to undermine the media, trying to make up his own facts. And it could be that while unemployment and the economy worsens, he could have undermined the messaging so much that he can actually control exactly what people think. And that is our job.
Yeah. Like I said earlier, if you control someone's perception, you control their actions, which come from perceptions. And that's the idea. And all these things, interestingly, all those news organizations, what are they doing? They're telling people what to think.
Control exactly what people think. And that is our job.
Your network pushed a fake news narrative. Hands up, don't shoot.
We want you to know that our hearts are out there marching with them.
That led to 2 mass shootings, riots, and a nationwide hate movement. Stage managing a protest to manipulate public opinion right after a terrorist attack. That's insidious. Your network telling Americans it was illegal to read WikiLeaks. That's insidious.
It's illegal to possess these stolen documents. It's different for the media. So everything you learn about this, you're learning from us.
Your network cutting off guests who mention a link between refugees and terrorism. That's insidious.
30% of their domestic terrorism cases that they're investigating are from folks who are refugees. It's important not to label all refugees bad people. That's not why I'm here. But
why does your satellite feed mysteriously drop every time someone is about to say something negative about Hillary Clinton?
2/3 or more of the public knows that Hillary Clinton's a liar. She can't be trusted. And now the 2 faces of Hillary Clinton are coming out. In fact, through WikiLeaks, that she says one thing. Oh, no.
Because of her support in the 1990s for anti-crime legislation that ultimately helped contribute to this era of mass incarceration that she now speaks out again.
We just lost Breonna Keeler.
Dear mainstream media, why did you spin the narrative all year that it was Trump supporters who were to blame for violence at Trump rallies?
If you want to know what led up to Chicago tonight, that was Donald Trump's display of leadership. Candidate Donald Trump's rhetoric has escalated it.
When it was clearly Democratic Party hired agitators who were responsible.
So the Chicago protest, when they shut all that was us.
Foval and his people train the agitators to go to Trump rallies.
Which means we have to have a central kind of agitator training.
Yep. We are contracted directly with the DNC and the campaign. What we don't need is for it to show up on CNN that the DNC paid for X people to. That's not going to happen.
Ultimately, the whole endeavor is to get negative press of Trump and his supporters in local and national media.
This is why 94% of the American people don't trust you.
But I think this is very high on the list of irresponsible things the guy has done.
This is much, much worse than what we've seen in the past.
These people are yelling and shouting and threatening.
CNN's audience has gone down by another third. There wasn't much there. Fox has dropped in the last year, 54% in their key demographic, 35% overall. They're dropping as we speak. They are turning into the new CNN. CNN is just moving to the MSNBC. MSNBC is moving to Mao Zedong level garbage.
Controlled, centralized corporate media is falling apart. You look at the numbers of even the top-ranked shows, and they're lucky to break 1 million viewers.
Mainstream media is done, right? Fox News, ABC, they're all watched by 70-year-olds who aren't invested in society.
I think we all now know better than to trust the press, than to rely on the press, than to believe what the media says about anything, anytime, anywhere. They're just liars.
This reality has been forced upon us. It is a choice, just like when I said slavery is a choice. We need to be free thinkers, then we need to learn how to feel free. We are controlled by the media, and today it all changes.
In the wake of the mainstream media's decline, alternative media sources have risen to fill the void. Today, YouTube is littered with sizable alternative news channels and podcasts, many of which are dedicated solely to exposing the New World Order matrix and its architects, a development which has greatly increased the acceptance of views which have historically been dismissed as conspiracy theory. Above all others, Alex Jones and David Icke have risen to the top. Their popularity has grown so much in recent years that it is no longer proper to call them alternative media, for they are rapidly becoming the new mainstream. Alex Jones's 2 appearances on the Joe Rogan Experience, one of the most popular podcasts in the nation, is a testament to the mainstreaming not only of Alex Jones, but the conspiracy narrative in general. And with the continual downfall of the traditional mainstream media and the increasing disclosure of the elite's dark secrets, these men with distinctly new age beliefs are slowly gaining the public's trust by having their claims that were once considered ludicrous now proven reasonable or even correct by startling revelations and the ominous unfolding of world events, effectively normalizing views that were once regarded as fringe and insane. And with the rise of Trump hysteria coming from the mainstream media and the social justice warriors, as well as Orwellian-style attacks on free speech since Trump's 2016 victory, unlikely partnerships have been created between people who, only just a few years ago, would have been separated by bitter disagreement.
You would know this as well. I've noticed a distinct shift on YouTube. We were talking about that on your show. When I was starting, any of the things that I espoused on there were wildly unpopular and downvoted. And now we're able to make inroads with people who used to frankly hate us and watch the Young Turks. I know you've always been popular, but have you seen that shift occur?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been on the air. It's been slow growth for 21 years, almost 22 years in April. It'll be 22 in 3 months. Starting off on local access, but 6 months, got a local radio show. And then from there, it got syndicated just a few years, a few affiliates. But now we've gone from 170 affiliates to over 250 just in the last year. It was the whole Trump effect kind of breaking through the political correctness. So it's been exponential growth. But in the last year and a half, just parabolic shooting straight up.
Yeah, I have definitely noticed that. And you would, I hate to use it, I don't know if it's an insult, you're more a part of the mainstream now. Before, I think you more so were known for more conspiracy theories. For
Sure,
the
more underground.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I mean, what's happened is the dinosaur media, the legacy media, has completely collapsed by their own annex and WikiLeaks and their arrogance. So, you know, it's kind of like they collapsed. And so now just a lot of people that won't watch them anymore, that have totally given up on them, have just come to the internet looking, you know, for the truth. And so just everybody gets a bigger audience, because it's not that we all have the truth or are all perfect, but we're trying to tell the truth. And so now it's kind of atomized out into thousands, like you said on my show, thousands of moderate size media systems, not just 4 or 5 big giant, you know, colossal systems.
This plan has been around a long time, and it's been incrementally introduced step by step, what I call the totalitarian tiptoe. And every step has been projected and promoted as unconnected to the other steps. But when you start seeing patterns, you can see it
But they didn't plan on the alternative media, or did they?
Because when I started out nearly 30 years ago, there was no alternative media. But as this has grown, and the internet has grown, there has been, and this is the key, there has been an alternative source of information. This alternative information has actually given people another way of looking at the same thing, another way of looking at 9/11, another way of looking at the banking system, another way of looking at terrorist attacks and what they use to justify.
The August 2018 banning of Alex Jones from every major social media platform has not only contributed greatly to the skyrocketing of his popularity, but has opened the minds of many former skeptics to the possibility that corrupt collusion does indeed exist at the highest levels of power, where people are effectively above the law and immune to prosecution.
2 days before PayPal banned us, they put a hate designation from the Southern Poverty Law Center saying I'm basically a terrorist. So when they call you a hate person now, it means a terrorist in Interpol. So all over the Western world, I am listed. And we've been sent documents out of England and out of the U.S. that we were sent this by high-level banking people that are freaked out. We made contacts, lawyers checked it, they can't believe it. They have designated me as an international terrorist, and that's how they took 5 of my 6 bank accounts and got me down to 1 bank account with perfect credit, saying you cannot take money on your shopping cart, InfoWarsStore.com, for your products, T-shirts, books, whatever. You aren't allowed to be in commerce because you are a terrorist.
And what do they use to define terrorist?
H. It's classified symbols, and we got some of the documents.
H is hate.
H is hate. And then just
so they just decide arbitrarily that you're a hateful person, that you promote hate.
No judge, no jury. It's the global Chinese social score. Hitler basically was the #1 thing on the History Channel when they first launched it. So you can hear what Hitler has to say, even though we know he's a bad guy. Well, why can't you hear what Alex Jones has to say? Because they have found what I talk about is effective. It gets people thinking, and they want it shut down because we've relaunched populism. InfoWars has done this. My audience has. 1776 worldwide. Populism, anti-globalism, anti-communism, anti-China. And the big tech companies, Google and Apple and all of them, have publicly moved to China, and they publicly agreed to censor and control the population. This is in the news. And that's why Tim Cook got so mad at me. And I made a huge issue to Trump, and I sent reports to the president. I know he got. And that's what happened on that Sunday night when they said, that's it, we're done with Jones. We have to take him down.
Being banned from YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Spotify, iTunes all at once, it cannot happen without collusion. And Jack Dorsey, by the way, we're talking about him, here he is bragging that he was wielding the power of his platform to change Alex's behavior and his points of view. Here you go. See the clip.
Well, I feel, any suspension, whether it be a permanent one or a temporary one, makes someone think about their actions and their behaviors. We have found that it does have the potential to impact and change behavior.
There you go. He's basically saying we put him in a timeout to try and make sure that he agrees with us. It's clearly about leftist media and tech giants coordinating together in an effort to silence anyone questioning their narrative. They just use this chilling defense. Jones violated the hate speech policies. give any bureaucratic organism, be it Washington or the tech giants in this case, the ability to determine hate speech, and you give up all speech.
Well, exactly. And it came out in the New York Times that both Tim Cook and Zuckerberg personally made the decision to pull InfoWars. But you've got to look at the backstory to illustrate how this is not, oh, just a private company. We had Democrat congressmen in October last year, when the truck attack happened in New York, talking to Twitter executives saying, why is this Paul Joseph Watson's tweet about the truck attack in top trending on the hashtag? And the Twitter executive was immediately like, yeah, we saw that, we removed that. Last month, Congressman Deutsch, Democrat, grilling YouTube and Facebook executives, why haven't you banned Alex Jones? Why haven't you banned InfoWars? Boom, a month later it happens. Yep. This is also a lobbying campaign, as he said. CNN, Oliver Darcy have been lobbying for 6 solid months to get InfoWars removed from YouTube, Facebook, etc., which is why it's so ridiculous. Today, they're all whining about, oh, Trump's a fascist because he's silencing the media. Meanwhile, they've been lobbying for 6 months to silence actual media outlets. We're the ones being silenced. What is Trump doing to them, apart from calling them mean names?
Jesus, you took the words right out of my mouth.
They want to control reality by controlling the language. If your words harm them physically, which is the argument they now try to make, that words are violence, then they can shut you up, they can silence you. So it all goes back once again to control and power. That's the only reason why they do any of this.
Point is that if you don't control it entirely, you are always at the mercy of the Silicon Valley mob. They take a cut and they get to control what it is you do and where you get to play.
So the alternative media is under tremendous pressure now and suppression because it's challenging the narrative. And that's why now we're seeing this war on freedom of speech. We're seeing the Silicon Valley giants in the devil's playground, more and more algorithmically controlling the flow of information using hoaxes like fake news, because they don't want this information circulating, because their perceptual imprisonment is being unraveled by alternative information. And we are now at a point where the efforts to suppress alternative information are going to get hysterical. They already are.
So now Stefan Molyneux's YouTube channel received 2 hard strikes, seemingly out of the blue. We don't know what for yet. Then YouTube issued the H3 Productions a hard strike. I think they were blocked from streaming, right?
Yeah,
blocked from
they were streaming. They were streaming.
It happened while they were streaming?
Yeah.
Now, let's not forget, since we last spoke, Gavin McInnes spontaneously banned from Twitter.
Yeah.
Who's next?
So the thing with social media is they have a blind spot to extremism on the left. I mean, when it comes to Antifa, they still openly organize, recruit on Twitter, on Facebook, and Facebook and Twitter have taken no actions to curtail any of this. In fact, no accounts that are affiliated with Antifa cells have been banned or restricted in their postings. They cast the net so wide that they're targeting people who are not extremists, while at the same time letting the militant far left actually organize openly.
How about the fact that they accused Alex Jones of being a conspiracy theorist, and then the biggest companies in the world conspired to get rid of him?
Yes, exactly. And that's the thing. There's this little kernel where people talk about Illuminati meetings, these crazy conspiracies, and everyone goes, oh, those people are crazy. But then when you see that, hold on, this guy was removed from every single major platform within 12 hours of each other, all of them, of course, there has to be collusion. And now there's justification for the paranoia, and you make conspiracy theorists more popular than ever.
What this has done has, not in its entirety, but it's been massively influential in triggering this gathering reassessment of what people perceive about the world, about themselves, about world events. And people have got more streetwise. Some of us have talked in depth about the nature of reality itself, and people have gone, hold on, maybe the world's not like I thought it was.
David Icke's gradual rise over the past 30 years is another major example of the growing popularity of conspiracy theory. Since the early 1990s, the public's perception of Icke has radically transformed, as he has gone from being considered a lunatic worthy of mockery and derision to a well-respected leader who may have been right all along.
Was it a great shock for you to discover this at 38?
Well, I think the word is gobsmacked. But again, you know, the best way of removing negativity is to laugh and be joyous. So I'm delighted that there's so much laughter in the audience tonight.
But no,
but just let me say this.
They're laughing at you. They're not laughing with you.
Fine.
You know, you were the laughing stock of England, and when you started out, as we've mentioned many times in the past, you would speak to, I think your first talk, you spoke to what, 3 people? You had 3 people in a room, and now
I've done major events in people's front rooms, Regina.
Exactly. And now you arrive in certain countries in the world, and the mainstream media comes out to greet you because what you have had to say over time has borne out to be true. And it was really based on your understanding that there is a corruption, there's a corrupt type of intelligence at the core that is able to infiltrate into and essentially use and control the people that we consider those at the top, the influencers, the elite.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the interesting things that's happened, and it's happening quicker and quicker, that which was dismissed as conspiracy theory, and let's not forget that term conspiracy theory and conspiracy theorist was brought into widespread use in the 1960s by the CIA, and the documents exist to prove this. And they contacted major media organizations, urging them to use these terms to discredit those that were understandably questioning the official story of the Kennedy assassination and the assassination of Malcolm X, etc. So it's been a term of derision. And it's interesting that people don't ask the question, well, it's a conspiracy theory. Yeah, hold on, deep breath. But is it true? Do the facts stack up? They never go to that stage. But what's happening now is reality. Life is stacking it up for them. I've been saying now for nearly 30 years, a very, very few people control global events and the direction of the world. And people were saying for so long through that 30 years, that's crazy, that's impossible. Well, actually, excuse me, it isn't. Look what's happening.
I'm loving the fact that your work is now going so much more mainstream, really. I mean, we think of you as the grandfather of conspiracy, but now we're learning that conspiracy is not a word that we should have been playing with all along, right?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome David Icke!
Thank you. Thank you.
If what you say has validity and you keep saying it, despite all the abuse and all the ridicule, you keep saying it. If it has validity, that's the key. If it doesn't, then it won't go anywhere. But if it does, eventually it will be shown to be so. And that's the process that I've been through. It's nothing like completed yet, but it's moving that way, where world events are concentrating people's minds on the fact that the world isn't like they thought it was, and they don't like the way the world's going. They feel uneasy about it, and that has got people in greater numbers to look at what I've written in the past, which is basically saying the world that we have now and we're going deeper into is the one that's been planned all along.
As early as 2006, journalist Lev Grossman reported in Time magazine that the 9/11 truth movement was, quote, not a fringe phenomenon. It is mainstream political reality. At that time, it was reported that more than 1/3 of adult Americans believed it was likely that the American government was at least partially complicit in the 9/11 attacks. And in the 14 years since, this number has undoubtedly grown exponentially. And with increasing awareness of an officially declassified false flag known as Operation Northwoods, people are becoming more and more open to the idea that perhaps 9/11 wasn't an Islamic terrorist attack after all.
Operation Northwoods was basically, in so many ways, 9/11 in 1962. This is official American documentation. The plan was for the American military to set up terrorist attacks in major cities, New York, Miami, others. And the idea was, problem, reaction, solution, was to blame it on a ground-to-air missile or a plane from Cuba and justify an invasion of Cuba as a result of that. All these years later, in 2001, basically Operation Northwoods, much expanded, played out in America and justified what? The invasion of country after country in the same way they wanted to use that as an excuse to invade Cuba.
This is one of my arguments about Operation Northwoods, that if they were able to push Operation Northwoods and get it signed by the Joint Chiefs of Staff in 1962, was it 62? Yes. If they were able to do that and no one went to jail and no one got arrested for proposing that they were going to arm Cuban friendlies and have them bomb Guantanamo Bay and blow up a Cuban jetliner.
And shoot people in movie theaters.
Right. Yes.
And schools.
Yes. That things evolve. Things evolve.
Do you believe that the Twin Towers were destroyed by forces of the American government or similar?
I think it's interesting the way these tragic events are used to enforce further controls on us.
What happened in the wake of 9/11 was a whole bunch of government officials got together behind closed doors. This became a mass surveillance program called Stellar Wind, which they said was supposed to monitor the phone calls and internet communications, emails, and things like that of everybody in the United States and around the world who they could get access to for links to Al-Qaeda. Of course, like weapons of mass destruction, it just didn't exist. It was all a power grab. This is what led to the world post 9/11, where all of our rights sort of evaporated, was they went, well, restrictions on what these agencies can do are costing lives. Therefore, naturally, we just have to unchain these guys and everything will be better, right? And we entered this era of increasingly unlimited government as a result.
When did you know that things were really squirrely?
At the NSA, then director Michael Hayden, he was a general, he later became director of the CIA, ordered the entire campus evacuated of thousands, tens of thousands of people, actually, and just said, go home, right? The CIA did the same thing. They were running on skeleton crews. At the moment, the country needed them more than they ever had. Why did these people have so much power and so much money and so much authority that if at the moments we need them the most, they're the first ones in the country that are leaving their buildings?
I think 9/11 being an inside job is ludicrous. I think it's ludicrous.
Dude, do you believe this, dude? That passport of Muhammad Atta was in his fucking pocket. It flew out, landed like 100 stories down underneath a fucking building. It's perfectly readable, and they find a suitcase with all this damnable in it. Didn't the whole plane disintegrate, dude? I'm just saying, dude. Whatever they said happened down there, it doesn't add up, dude. I don't believe that you could be in a plane that bursts into flames. They can't find the black box, but they find your passport. Dude, that middle building, what the was with that thing? What, did it get lonely? The other two collapsed and like there's no damage, and all of a sudden it's just going to...
The biggest Achilles heel of all is Building 7. Building 7 was a 47-story steel frame building. And it fell at 5:20 in the afternoon on 9/11, having not been hit by a plane. And if you look at it, you will see the most obvious controlled demolition you will ever see. Building 7 coming down through fire, not even from a plane hit, but from office furnishings, official story, makes it before and since in the whole of architectural engineering history, the first steel frame building to fall and collapse because of fire. Building 7 was a controlled demolition quite demonstrably. And you know who told us it was? Larry Silverstein, the owner.
I said, we've had such terrible loss of life.
maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
I'm watching Fox News, CNN at my studio. And then I go get a pizza at 4 o'clock with CBS Radio back then. And they go, Solomon Brothers, Building 7 is going to be brought down to controlled demolition to save other buildings. So I go back on air and announce Building 7 is being brought down to save other buildings. And for like 5 years, everyone goes, I'm crazy. Then CNN and all of them archive it on the internet. Everyone's watching Building 7 going, BBC, ABC.
Let me ask you,
CNN.
what do you think happened with Tower 7?
CNN, ABC, and CBS told me the government blew it up.
The government blew it
you can
up.
play the clips. They go, the cops are like, get back, we're blowing it up. And the media goes, oh, you mean the cops blew it up? No, the cops are told, get back on the countdown. I've interviewed the cops like 10, 9, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
If you're in that building, if they're coming down, the building is about to blow up. Move it back. All right, guys? We are looking back. It's a building about to blow up. Flame, debris coming down.
Well, when you look at it, the way it falls exactly like a controlled demolition. Exactly. So it falls from the top down. But if you actually
watch free fall speed.
Right. But if you watch the full video, the center of it collapses. Like there's a full video where you're looking at the top of the building and the center of it collapses far before the outside does.
That's how they take out the elevator shafts.
They take out the central thing first.
So is it possible that the internal fires in that building were so unbelievably hot that it up every floor and they really did pancake on top of each other and then the exterior structure just collapsed? Is that possible? Because I'm not an engineer.
I've had the engineers say it's not.
It's not possible at all?
And here's the problem, Joe. They announced it fell in its own footprint 27 minutes before it did on 5 channels.
Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy. As you can see behind me, New York is still unable to take on board what has happened to them today.
Presumably there were very few people in the Salomon building when it collapsed.
It's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
This very week, the University of Alaska, Fairbanks, has produced a report after a 4-year study into asking the question, could Building 7 have fallen because of fire? And they've said, these are academics, engineers, building people, no way could Building 7 have fallen through fire.
Well, it's been a point of controversy now for more than a decade. A researcher now from the University of Alaska Fairbanks is weighing in.
World Trade Center Building 7 was not struck by a plane, but did collapse hours after the Twin Towers. Well, now Dr. Leroy Hulsey, a civil engineering professor at UAF, he led a 4-year study which reevaluates whether Building 7's collapse could have been caused by fire, as was determined by the National Institute for Standards and Technology in 2008. Hulsey says his findings were a resounding no, and his simulations paint a different picture than the federal agencies.
So we virtually simulated the building, and we looked at that analysis, and we also virtually simulated what they did. We couldn't get it to do what they were at. They did.
A group called Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth paid for the study. The organization is petitioning Congress to call for a new investigation into the World Trade Center destruction.
You look at Operation Northwoods, you look at that. That is about as gangster and sinister and evil as you can.
Yeah, we went over just a little while ago. We were going into
totally.
it
So my point is, if you believe that, no other conspiracy theory, whether they're right or wrong, like government conspiracy, should be ridiculed. You shouldn't. There should be no ridicule.
You're right. You should, instead of looking at them with ridicule, you should look at them objectively.
We already talked about human-animal hybrids, mass farming of humanoid tissue, transhuman in-game.
And we talked about aliens.
And you looked it up, and it's all right there. Not conspiracies, but real world programs developing a breakaway civilization. What is a breakaway civilization? You understand that? It's the key to everything. Standardized total surveillance control grid. The power to spy is the power to control. Human-animal hybrids, we already covered that.
Yep.
Mass farming of humanoid tissue, transhuman endgame.
I mean, one of the best things about this podcast to me is I got to show people what I really love about Alex Jones. You're fucking fun. This is hilarious, and you say a lot of shit that turns out to be real. It was good. We built up pressure, too.
I gotta piss.
Go ahead, piss.
New f***ing world order.
The existence of secret pedophile networks run by the elites of the world has also long been dismissed as conspiracy theory. However, recent events over the past few years, from the release of John Podesta's emails through WikiLeaks to the suspicious suicide of Jeffrey Epstein in August of 2019, the issue of elite pedophilia has increasingly been brought out into the public light, substantiating certain inconvenient truths that conspiracy theorists have been proclaiming for decades. This slow revelation of pedophilia among elite circles is a significant sign that the Matrix disclosure is fully underway.
When I've, over the years, investigated and followed through major people involved in pushing the direction of the world, I have found three absolutely repeating themes with them. One, secret societies. Two, Satanism. Three, very topical at the moment, pedophilia.
Some serious allegations this morning facing the State Department.
That's right. According to internal State Department memos, the agency might have called off or intervened in investigation into possibly illegal and inappropriate behavior within its ranks, allegedly to protect jobs and avoid scandals. This concerns the time that Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. We want to get right to NBC's Chief White House Correspondent Chuck Todd with the latest. Chuck, good morning to you.
Good morning, Savannah. You know, there's an old saying in Washington that the cover-up is worse than the crime. But in this case, both parts of it are disturbing. Allegations of prostitution and pedophilia, and allegations that those crimes were somehow covered up or not looked into. So the State Department this morning is having to respond to those claims and those investigations of misconduct by State Department officials, including by an ambassador and security agents attached to then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. And the allegations are that these investigations were whitewashed, quashed altogether, and that those orders came from high up.
A State Department memo says the ambassador, quote, routinely ditched his protective security detail in order to solicit sexual favors from both prostitutes and minor children.
Let's recap. What are the key details that you're breaking here on Breitbart News Daily?
They found State Department emails. They found a lot of other really damning criminal information, including money laundering, including the fact that Hillary went to this sex island with convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Bill Clinton went there more than 20 times. Hillary Clinton went there at least 6 times. This is stuff coming right off a hard drive that was owned by Weiner and his wife, Abedin, Hillary's closest advisor for the last 20 years.
We know that both of them have been a major part and participant of what's called the Lolita Express, which is a plane owned by Mr. Jeff Epstein, a wealthy multimillionaire who flies down to the Bahamas and allows Bill Clinton and Hillary to engage in sex with minors.
Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton's best friend, Jeffrey Epstein, who's a convicted pedophile who was trafficking underage children as sex slaves on his private island. He ran an entire operation on his island. Why is Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton hanging out with a serial convicted pedophile who traffics children as sex slaves on a private island?
And so when you get into this Pizzagate stuff, and why the hell would politicians sign up for something called North American Man-Boy Love Association, or NAMBLA? According to Peterson, 86% of Congress are members of NAMBLA. Imagine what would happen if we find out that even part of that number is true. Well, guess what? It already is happening. We have this famous actor, Corey Feldman, among several major figures who have said that Hollywood is pedophilia.
Steven Spielberg is a pedophile. Oh, I'm not going to talk about Tom Hanks either, who is also a pedophile. Tom Hanks, folks, is a pedophile. There's this girl, Sarah Ruth Ashcraft, on Twitter, who has been accusing Tom Hanks of raping her when she was 13. Her dad sold her to Tom Hanks. She's been accusing him for months and months and months and months and months. He's never addressed it. Her dad, I think I saw a picture with her dad and Obama that she posted today. Obama, 100%. 100%. Everyone in Hollywood knew about Kevin Spacey. Everyone. But literally nothing happened. Nothing happened. No one said anything. Nothing happened. For how long? How long was Kevin's? Years and 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 years. Jimmy Savile raped and murdered hundreds of kids over the course of 3 decades or longer. No one ever looked into it. If he hung out with the royal family, he was knighted. He was knighted.
New disclosures in the story of the late Jimmy Savile, an eccentric, flamboyant British entertainment superstar, defy imagination, with hundreds of victims already identified and now even more disturbing allegations coming to light.
We suspect that's probably just the tip of an iceberg, though. So the latest Metropolitan Police estimate from London is that probably Jimmy Savile has abused something like 1,500 individuals over a number of decades.
Jimmy Savile allegations seem to have opened the floodgates of abuse claims from that era, and many of his showbiz contemporaries have ended up here in court. Like Rolf Harris, a veteran entertainer and artist accused of 12 counts of indecent assault. And just yesterday, 70s British glam rock star Gary Glitter was charged with 8 offenses connected to girls between the ages of 12 and 14. But they all pale in comparison to Jimmy Savile, a pedophile hiding in plain sight.
It's hard to get our heads around this idea that there could be as many as 1,500 victims. Is there a sense this was an organized ring of abusers?
There seems to be suggestions that there was contact between them. We've heard people who were raped as children within paedophile rings saying that Jimmy Savile and other people who are being abused now were celebrity guests amongst other, not so famous paedophiles.
I mean, you said a decade ago that Savile was doing this from your BBC contacts because you worked there, and now it's all mainstream news, and he's best buddies, with the royal family, and they're constantly finding dead bodies of kids and women on the royal estates, and it's just always swept under the rug. First time it really hit me was at Seth's. We went over there, played Mafia. It's a role-playing game that we play. And at the end of the night, it was me, Seth, and his brother-in-law, and Seth turned to me and opened up this secret bookshelf, and he's like, "This is where we keep the children." I tried to just put it out of my mind, but then about a month later, Seth, Claire, and I were having a dinner at their house, and then he basically admitted that he's a pedophile. If everybody knew, we could solve it literally today. But people don't know. The media is totally blacking it out, the mainstream media. That's why when people say the news is fake, it's because it's run by these people who are into some very, 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 very sick stuff.
When I read the Podesta emails, I was horrified, realized that John Podesta has been involved in child sex trafficking, and so have the Clintons for many years. Many people have tried to expose this. Andrew Breitbart was, I think, the first person that exposed John Podesta for being involved in child sex trafficking. And there's been a complete and total blackout in the mainstream media about it, because guess what? Many people in the mainstream media are involved. There were some mainstream media outlets that I freelanced for who flat out told me, I had editor-in-chiefs of major publications tell me they will not cover child sex trafficking. So when people don't understand why this stuff isn't getting covered in the mainstream media? Well, look who runs and controls the mainstream media. It's people who are involved in child sex trafficking, are engaging in raping children, and are profiting off of child sex trafficking.
Do you think that the whole push for pedophilia now has become mainstream? At what point does it become mainstream? Yeah. I think we have some overlays here. The pedophilia supporting publications, they've been running stories for the last few years. Yep. Yeah, we actually broke the fact that the salon pedophile was the one who was actually still currently grooming children. And then they wrote an article that we were monsters. Talking about mainstream, CNN's Chris Cuomo, the DNC pool boy in chief, said that 12-year-old girls are bigots if they don't want to look at grown men's penises. There's the tweet. Here's something else that's been going on for a long time. Child drag queens. Okay. I think we have some B-roll. 11-year-old drag queen Desmond. This is called Desmond is Amazing. Stripping at a club, having money thrown at him for people who can't see right now. Look at this. Tell me that isn't disturbing.
There was this Ben Swan guy who did this recent piece about it, and a lot of people got very angry. Did you see the piece? Did you see the piece that he did? It seemed to me to be pretty measured. And he was making some connections between that symbol for child pedophilia.
Yes.
And the logo for the pizza place. He also did he make the Hastert connection with Podesta?
Well, I mean, Hastert
confirmed child molester.
And best buddies with Podesta.
And former Speaker of the House. So it's true that Hastert's in jail. It's true that Hastert is a known pedophile that a judge called a serial pedophile, right?
Yes.
That's true. It's 100%. It's true that Podesta was friends with Hastert. That's 100%, right?
Yes. And then you've got Podesta's brother, who's big in Washington, in an article in 2007 in the Washington Post. I'm going to try to give you the exact headline, which was something like radical art or something.
There is something to that because some of his artwork was super disturbing that he had in his house, like little kids with their pink butts.
Yeah.
They were in their underwear and it looked like they had been paddled.
Yes.
And they were all standing there with their butts facing.
See, as usual,
very bizarre.
Joe knows more about this than I do. See, and that's all I do is cover these real things. So let me give you the new news.
So that is real.
Thousands of emails come out with them talking about we'll have the kids ready 6, 7, and 8 in the hot tub at this time, and they're.
I didn't see anything like that.
Oh, it gets really crazy.
Where did it say that?
It was in the emails. There's freaking thousands of them.
Bonnie will be Uber service to transport Ruby Emerson and Maeve Luzado 11-9 and almost 7. So you'll have some further entertainment, and they will be in that pool for sure. What in the?
That's only one of them.
And that's a real confirmed email, right?
Yes.
So all the people that thought that this idea that, whether they tried to make it ridiculous by calling it Pizzagate or connecting it to a pizza place, everybody that thought that was ridiculous, it is not ridiculous that there could potentially be some sort of a pedophile ring.
They usually have high intelligence, and there's armies. We're fighting a pedophile conspiracy, but beyond that, it's a vampire conspiracy in that they are interdimensionally sucking the essence of our youth.
Right.
And they believe they're possessed by an off-world entity.
They do?
Yes, they do. Go, there's some wedding pictures from Yarbo's wedding. I mean, they have a pentagram, right on the thing. It's that's the thing. These people, they advertise everything with their symbols. Make no mistake, this is a cult. There is a widespread cult that is worldwide.
These pedophiles, most of them are Satanists.
Mm-hmm.
The rape of children is part of their ritual. It's part of rituals that they conduct to their demonic, God, Baal, Lucifer, whoever they worship.
They literally feed off the negative energy of human fear and also plasma in the blood.
Pedophilia is about using the pedophile to draw off the life force of the prepubescent child, because these archontic entities want that energy more than anything else. That's why you find pedophilia absolutely rife, along with Satanism, in these elite bloodlines.
I want you to realize there's a bigger system of control. There's a bigger system of control that is at play. And I want people to open their eyes to it, because people don't want to believe, they can't believe that something so evil is happening. We have been brainwashed for our whole lives. People are still under the spell. People still think CNN has something decent to say. People still think the New York Times has something decent to say. People still listen to Stephen Colbert. Stephen Colbert is a pedophile. It's scary, guys. People get killed over this shit. It happens all the time. Aren't you concerned for my life? Yeah.
this country was based on the fact that individuals had a right to know. We had a right to understand and to expect from our leaders the truth. We haven't received the truth from our leaders, and we're not going to. They have their own agenda. They have their own ideas about what they're going to do, and it doesn't involve you. I think it's high time that this country begin to ask questions of its leaders, its misleaders. We respectfully submit that it is time to wake up to the most serious problem that we face as a free society. Speaking of time, the new edition of the magazine tells us that it's high time, like the owl, to see things that have been kept in the dark. This will not be difficult because the truth has been hiding in plain view all along.
David was changed forever in 1991 after a series of extraordinary experiences amid the ancient sites and stunning landscapes of Peru. What happened set him on an incredible journey that's brought mass ridicule, dismissal, but ultimately recognition that he has something unique to say about the world, the nature of reality, and the forces that manipulate and dictate the direction of human society.
As we're just coming up, not far out of Seastar, just a little group of houses, tourist shops is what it is. I'm looking out and I'm seeing this hill to my right. And I'm looking at it, just daydreaming away, and all I can hear in my head is, come to me, come to me, come to me, come to me. And I walked up the hill, and when I got up there was kind of stones there. I walk into the middle of these stones, and I'm looking at a beautiful view over distant mountains, across Seastar, across the distant mountains. And my feet started to vibrate and get warm, bottom of my feet. And it was like magnetism again. And then my arms went out at 45 degrees like that. I made no conscious decision to do that. And then I'm feeling a drill going into my top of my head and through my body. I'm feeling something coming the other way and out. This energy is getting stronger, and I'm starting to shake a little bit. This very clear, not voice again, but very clear thought form went through my mind, and it said, it will be over when you feel the rain. And I'm standing under a cloudless Peruvian sky, a big red nose to show it. This energy built up and built up until I'm basically shaking. And what I was doing was coming in and out of consciousness, in the sense that, you know, you drive a car and you don't know where the last 2 miles has gone. Your subconscious has been driving the car. It was that was happening. And one of these times where I came back to consciousness, the whole thing took about 40, 50 minutes, maybe an hour. I saw over the distant mountains that there was a light gray mist. And I thought, it's raining. And then it got darker. This rainstorm comes out of the mountains, and it's like people talk about people talk about a front coming over. This front was dead straight. This rain was coming at me dead straight. I've described it as like pulling curtains across the sky, and it's coming towards me. And by this time, I'm shaking with this energy. And I watched this rain, this wall of stair-rod rain, come towards me. Then the rain hit me, and I was soaked in an instant. Such was its, the level of it. And when the rain hit me, the energy stopped, and I staggered forward. Now, my arms have been like that all this time, never felt a thing. Now, shoulders, agony. And I felt my legs were like Bambi, hardly stand. My feet were vibrating, my hands were vibrating for ages afterwards. I couldn't sleep that night because my body was vibrating, my feet, my hands were vibrating. And then I came back to Britain. It was like you lived in a bubble, perceptual bubble. And then someone came along in an instant and burst the bubble. Now, information, concepts, understandings, all these things is pouring into your conscious mind. in an instant. It's like a dam's burst. I didn't know what was happening to me. I was desperately trying to get a grip of what was happening to my life, and I end up on a primetime chat show watched that night by 17 million people apparently, that was one of my greatest gifts because of the enormous ridicule that followed that, because that's what cleared me out, the fear of what other people think. Part of me, if you like, the 5 sense level of me was kind of dying, because they were laughing at me from the audience almost from the moment I sat down, and Wogan's playing to the audience and all that stuff. But so part of me's dying. But I was so aware, and I can still remember it, still feel it. Something was saying to me, "It's going to be fine. This is going somewhere. This is leading somewhere. It's going to be fine." And that kind of drove me on.
Yeah, you actually seemed very calm in your convictions. You were like, okay, they laughed at Jesus. And it seems like you knew you had the message and whatever it took to get it out.
Through 1990, I wrote a book called Truth Vibrations about what was happening to me, not that I really understood it. And I called it Truth Vibrations. It's an interesting story as well, because in this period immediately following Betty Shine, I found myself, again, synchronistically, coincidence, not looking for it. I went to see Betty Shine, I made a decision, but I started meeting other psychics that I never went to see, but came into my life synchronistically. And there was a common theme that I was being told, which is that there was a vibrational change coming, what I would now call an informational frequency energetic change coming, that was going to wake humanity up from its coma, its slumber, that there was a story that had to be told, that there was a massive shadow across the earth, over the world, that needed to be lifted. And that this vibrational change was going to have two effects. One, it was going to wake people up from the coma. Those that were more awake would be affected first, but eventually those that were solid gold asleep then would be affected. And secondly, all that had been hidden was going to be brought to the surface where we could see it. Now, of course, in 1990, when this was happening, I was being told this. There was no evidence of any of it. But look at it now. Look at what we know now. We didn't know then. Look at what we know now. We didn't know 5 years ago about so many different things. And that's why I gave the name of the name to this change as Truth Vibrations. Everything would be brought to the surface. So she says that she's seeing a figure in her mind, which again just a projection, and this figure was asking her to communicate with me. I was told I was going to go out on a world stage and reveal great secrets, that I would face enormous opposition, but they would always be there to protect me. That information would be sometimes put into my mind, and I would think, where did that come from? My God, has that happened in the last 30 years? And other times I would be led to knowledge, which has happened constantly in the most synchronistic way. I couldn't have put the information I put together unless there was some unseen force opening and closing the doors in the maze that was leading me to the start. The synchronicity of the way this information has come to me, and in layers. First of all, in the early 90s, it was like 5 cents information, banking scams, political scams, how the whole thing works. Then it was, non-human entities. Then it was illusory nature of reality, and it's all kind of been so synchronistic. But so I was told I was going to go out on the world stage and reveal great secrets, and it's happened. What was one of the lines she said? One man cannot change the world, but one man can communicate the message that can change the world. And that's the point. It's all about information. Information changes the world. Lack of information has created the one we live in. And that changes perception. Change perception, you change the world.
In this episode, we're going to be talking about the battle between the cabal versus the alliance and the enigmatic mystery of QAnon.
Many someones posting as Q falsely claim that the world is run by a satanic cabal of elites led by Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and the deep state, and that Donald Trump, with the help from secret allies, including special counsel Robert Mueller, will expose and defeat this deep state.
You're in deep with the Trump administration.
Well, I've had Trump on and I talked to him some, but I mean, really.
Yeah, he's your buddy.
Alex Jones. He was a nice guy, actually. You like him? That's good. Alex Jones, nice guy.
I mean, what I really like is he's tweeted InfoWars 3 or 4 times and plugged the T-shirt. But, you know, it makes me like Trump more, obviously, that they ended up reaching out to us to have him on the show.
Your take on it is that it's good to have him in, despite whatever flaws people may perceive
He has goodwill. He wants prosperity.
And he's not a part of the system that he replaced.
That's why they're totally against it. The whole power structure has been against Trump for a very serious reason. Trump is coming after them and really is attempting to bring down this whole global system.
Trump said that nation states should act in their own interest. He rejected this idea of multilateralism at the United Nations, the center stage for multilateralism.
That is why America will always choose independence and cooperation over global governance, control, and domination.
In the green room backstage, you were talking about how Trump is now the new dawn of the machine, of the American machine, how he's been put in place to clean it all up, go after the Pizzagate pedophiles, go after the criminal elements of the CIA.
Newt Gingrich said, and it's on the web, and go listen to it yourself. He said, Washington, D.C. and the power boys, the power guys in Washington, D.C. are scared to death of Trump. Why? Because he's not a member of that secret society that runs America.
And now they're faced with a very real prospect of Donald Trump becoming the leader of the party, and it absolutely drives them crazy. They just cannot imagine sharing. Well, because he's an outsider. He's not them. He's not part of the club. He's uncontrollable. You know, he hasn't been through the initiation rites. He didn't belong to the secret society.
Donald Trump is, I think, the man to do this simply because of his personality. He's independent. He's not financially tied to any of these people. He's known as a maverick, and that is exactly what we need right now to lead against this deep state shadow government swamp, as some call it.
There's a lot of other things that are going on that are signifying that Trump is part of this group that is working to take down this occult elite.
This next segment is brought to you by the letter Q, specifically QAnon. What is QAnon? Many someones posting as Q falsely claim that the world is run by a satanic cabal of elites led by Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and the deep state, and that Donald Trump, with the help from secret allies, including special counsel Robert Mueller, will expose and defeat this deep state.
Proof the deep state is real in America and that you, the American people, see what is really going on. 74% of you, the American people, say you think this group of unelected bureaucrats are secretly trying to manipulate policy. And it's deeper than that. We're going to have a ton of examples that prove that you are, in fact, right.
The deep state hates Donald Trump. They will stop at nothing to impeach him, defeat him, and destroy him. But what they really fear is that you will find out about them.
In this episode, we're going to be talking about the battle between the cabal versus the alliance and the enigmatic mystery of QAnon.
The Trump administration has been one of the most significant developments in the mainstreaming of the conspiracy narrative and the rise of the new Gnostic army. Since conspiracy theorists tend to view presidents as nothing but puppets of the globalist puppeteers, Alex Jones's endorsement of Trump was unprecedented, a sign that perhaps American politics is heading in a brand new direction. Unlike the vast majority of presidents before him, Trump appears to possess a genuine interest in uncovering government secrets and conspiracies, such as the JFK assassination, as shown in this tweet from October 2017, and even 9/11. Trump has made his stance against globalism very clear, particularly in his 2018 speech at the United Nations General Assembly. His declaration of America's quote-unquote independence and cooperation perfectly echoes a concept that Alice Bailey believed in called ideal nationalism. That is, a global confederation of enlightened nations that, instead of amalgamating into one giant political structure, maintain their national sovereignty and work together peacefully, a true application of the occult principle, unity in diversity. Likewise, Trump's rejection of, quote, global governance, control, and domination also echoes Alice Bailey's rejection of, quote, the so-called new order of the totalitarian powers, which promoted a herd-like collectivism that destroyed both national and individual sovereignty. In contrast to the disempowering New World Order of the Illuminati, Bailey's global confederation of enlightened and completely independent nations would, quote, develop in humanity a sense of divinity. Following Bailey's lead, Trump is empowering the leaders of other nations to stand against the global threat of the New World Order and its demoralizing view of humanity.
We reject the ideology of globalism, and we embrace the doctrine of patriotism. We will never surrender America's sovereignty to an unelected, unaccountable global bureaucracy. Around the world, responsible nations must defend against threats to sovereignty, not just from global governments, but also from other new forms of coercion and domination. That is one reason the United States will not participate in the new global compact on migration. Migration should not be governed by an international body unaccountable to our own citizens. We will no longer surrender this country or its people to the false song of globalism. The nation state remains the true foundation for happiness and harmony. I am skeptical of international unions that tie us up and bring America down. A number of these reforms that I will outline tonight will be opposed by some of our nation's most powerful special interests. That's because these interests have rigged our political and economic system for their exclusive benefit. Believe me, it's for their benefit. America was founded on liberty and independence, and not government coercion, domination, and control. We are born free, and we will stay free.
Jerome Corsi, contributor to Alex Jones's program InfoWars and author of Killing the Deep State, claims that Trump was directly recruited by the military to fight the New World Order, also known as the Cabal or the Deep State, and help bring globalist criminals like Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama to justice, hence Trump's promise to drain the swamp.
About 3 years ago, a group of generals came to me, and it was explained to me they were ready to conduct a coup d'etat. They were ready to move Barack Obama from office with military force. And then a few weeks later, I got another call and said that they were reconsidering. You know why they were reconsidering? Because they talked to Donald Trump. And Trump agreed that he would run. And they agreed that if he would run, they would conduct their coup d'etat as a legitimate process, rooting out the traitors within government. And that pact between the military and Donald Trump has held. If you take a look at the depth of this corruption, it's pervasive. Since George H.W. Bush, the bureaucrats who have stayed, including these SES bureaucrats who are there mostly permanently, they're globalists. They don't believe in America anymore. They think they're smarter than America. Donald Trump will be invoking military tribunals. And even Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama are going to be facing treason charges.
There is a major push to prosecute Pizzagate on an official level. Why did Trump just fire the director of the FBI, James Comey? Because he wouldn't prosecute Pizzagate. That's what we're hearing from the inside sources. Trump has convened multiple secret grand juries to investigate this, and they are coming up with so much stuff.
James Comey has been essentially a Hillary Clinton fixer going all the way back to him sitting on the Whitewater Committee. And let me mention here, too, that Mr. Comey was tied directly into the HSBC Bank money laundering felony, where HSBC was laundering drug money from drug cartels from Central and South America. And James Comey sat on the board of directors and obviously was aware this was going on. They have thumbed their nose at the Constitution, abused their powers, broken the law multiple times, and it's ironic that the majority of these cases go back to protecting Hillary Rodham Clinton. Since she started as First Lady, she and her husband have weaved an international criminal organization that stretches around the globe and within the United States.
We will convict and indict the President of the United States, Loretta Lynch, and many others who were involved in the cover-up of the massive corruption that occurred under the Clinton Foundation. I am just a small part of something far bigger than myself. It was the brave men and women who were in the FBI, the CIA, the Director of Intelligence, the military intelligence, and men and women in 15 other intelligence organizations who were sick and tired of seeing this corruption in the White House, in the Justice Department, and in the intelligence system. And we decided that there was something we had to do in order to save the Republic. So we initiated a counter coup through Julian Assange, who's been very brave and really quite formidable in his ability to come forth and provide all the necessary emails that we gave to him in order to undermine Hillary and Bill Clinton.
Those Hillary Clinton emails, they connect together with the cables that we have published of Hillary Clinton, creating a rich picture of how Hillary Clinton performs in office, but more broadly, how the US Department of State operates. So, for example, the disastrous, absolutely disastrous intervention in Libya, the destruction of the Gaddafi government, which led to the occupation of ISIS, of large segments of that country, weapons flows going over to Syria, being pushed by Hillary Clinton into jihadists within Syria, including ISIS. That's there in those emails.
There were major intelligence agencies and patriots in the government who were sick of what was happening and were sick of Hillary and Obama backing jihadist groups and other things. And so they're rolling those groups up right now. They really are standing up against them. And this is a historic moment. And so there's been a counter coup through the electoral process in our country. And that's what WikiLeaks was. That wasn't the Russians. That was U.S. intelligence agencies. And now patriots inside U.S. intelligence agencies are preparing to roll up the pedophile networks nationwide. That's why you've seen arrests in Pennsylvania, arrests in L.A. And so what you're beginning to see is the beginning of all the pedophilia coming out as they roll up the procurers that grab your kids out of backyards or that go out as social workers and get the kids or whatever. They're rolling all those up right now to get the Renfields. Renfield brings the people to Dracula. That's the allegory. I'm not saying a real vampire.
Right. I know what you're saying.
And so they're going to now roll it up into the higher level groups. And then Eric Prince of Blackwater, he comes out in the news okay, through the White House organ, Breitbart.
Uh-huh.
Okay, that's basically from Trump's mouth, and says, yes, we've confirmed high-level pedophilia rings in the Clinton operation. We're going to bring them down.
The Justice Department is trying to run out the clock to elect Hillary Clinton to prevent any real justice from being done, trying to keep the sunlight and the disinfecting effects of the truth and transparency from, shining on this great evil that has gone on and is slowly being exposed.
We are finally putting America first. Yet the deep state and the failed ruling class are trying to resist any changes to their failed policies of the past. They believe it is their right to rule over you and to redistribute your wealth all around the world. No, thank you.
What is the dangerous and murky deep state that President Trump keeps talking about? Is it a secret Illuminati that controls everything around us? So who are they? President Donald Trump has been claiming that there's a vast deep state conspiracy against him for years now.
Let me share a headline from the first week of March when I was here back at the first week of March. We talked about this article from Monica Crowley. It said, dark forces want to personally destroy Trump. Well, this is the first week of March. And listen to this. It's like we're seeing happening this week what she said that the dark forces want to do to this man. It says, what I hope that the president and his senior aides understand is that these forces are not just looking to delegitimize him. They want to personally destroy him, destroy his presidency, and they would like to see the man in prison. I hope the president understands I am not overstating this. They are out for blood.
You know, a lot of people call them the deep state. I call it a malignant force. That's how I open the book. These are people. Well said. Thank you. These are people in the intelligence community, the FBI, the Department of Justice, the State Department. They are people of like mind. They are all addicted to power. Trump was a threat to them because he promised to drain the swamp. The swamp didn't want to be drained.
What would be your guess of the percentage of people that we ought to be worried about that have really stepped across the line and threatened this republic of ours?
It's a small cabal at the top.
We have a coup within our government at the senior levels of the CIA, the DOJ, and the FBI. At this point, attempting to unseat a duly elected president who is elected by the American people and remove him from office. This is at best collusion between the CIA and the FBI, and at worst, a conspiracy, perhaps even treason, on the part of senior officials in the shadow government, deep state, whatever you want to call it, to attack Donald Trump and remove him from office.
Since his presidential victory, Trump has been the target of relentless, systemic attacks from the mainstream media and official government agencies, who seem suspiciously united in an anti-Trump campaign. In addition to constantly being labeled racist, sexist, and mentally unstable by the mainstream media, Trump has also been the target of more direct attacks by the FBI and the Justice Department, accusing him of being a secret Russian agent who, with the aid of Russia, illegally won the 2016 election. In February 2019, former Deputy Director of the FBI, Andrew McCabe, proudly admitted on 60 Minutes that he and other high-level officials had seriously discussed removing President Trump based on nothing more than suspicions of Russian collusion. Despite the allegations, no solid evidence has emerged in the 3+ years since these allegations were initially made. Ironically, the only solid evidence to surface has incriminated Trump's enemies, revealing that there is in fact a coordinated anti-Trump network within the government that is determined to see Trump impeached and disgraced. Alex Jones, Jerome Corsi, Kevin Shipp, Sean Hannity, and many other high-profile Trump supporters maintain that the Russian collusion accusations have all been nothing more than coordinated deep state tactics to delegitimize Trump's presidency and thwart his attempts to prosecute members of the cabal for their criminal activity, especially their participation in child sex trafficking and pedophilia. For decades, the existence of a deep state has been confined to the realm of conspiracy theory, but this constant coordinated assault against President Trump has led to an increasingly mainstream acknowledgement of the deep state, which, as I outlined in episode 2, is one of the 3 main goals of the Matrix disclosure.
This essentially is a global international criminal cabal that has penetrated into our government and now has senior level governments colluding, and I would argue conspiring, a conspiracy to unseat a duly elected sitting president. An international dark network that is connected and penetrates all the way to the top levels of our government.
What kind of a world do they want us to live in? A one world government, a new world order?
We're into governments, government agencies, the so-called deep state, which I've been writing about for 30 years nearly, and now it's common parlance, the deep state.
And let's talk a little bit about the deep state, if we can, Russ. What, in your opinion, is the deep state?
Our colleagues in the more conventional news organizations always poo-poo this stuff, but it's a legitimate concept. The concept, George, of the deep state is simply that there are interests that are not going to leave it to chance. They're not going to leave it to the popular vote. And they work to make sure that their values, their philosophy, and I would say to some extent certainly their own personal financial and other interests are secured. We've had a deep state in the United States going back to the Founding Fathers. I mean, there have always been people of means who basically rigged things in their favor. They're members of things like the Council on Foreign Relations. Mm-hmm. Maybe they go to these things like the Bilderberg meetings.
Would you call them the Illuminati?
You've got these kind of elements, certainly in the FBI, which is, by the way, just historically was just thick with members of secret societies. The CIA, the NSA, the military is very, very clannish at the higher levels. George W. Bush, George H.W. Bush, the grandfather Prescott Bush, they were all members of Skull and Bones. You know, what is That's right. that? These are these kind of hazing rituals that are supposed to create bonds. They have bonds of loyalty and secrecy that they will never rat each other out.
They're bizarre.
Yeah, it's very similar to like omerta. You know, it's very similar to what you find in organized crime. So you got to start looking at things like who are the Supreme Court justices? I mean, these people themselves are, some of them are members of these kinds of secret societies. Potter Stewart, who was on the Supreme Court, was in Skull and Bones. And so they all know each other.
It's a club.
It is a club.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club.
The last 2 weeks of July of every year, a secret meeting is held in our country in Northern California by the world's most powerful people, bankers, politicians, industrialists, entertainment luminaries, all overworld figures. This group, directly connected with the European ruling elites, is commonly known as the Bohemian Society. Our now famous Council of Foreign Relations, the government behind the American government, is represented here, along with members of the Bilderberg Group of Europe. A meeting held once a year to decide a worldwide scale, your future, a shining example of true democracy carried on in the dark. Obviously here, your vote doesn't count. More specifically American and even darker and equally as insidious is an organization that our own President George Bush belongs to, namely Skull and Bones. Rightly understood to be America's secret establishment. The Bohemian Society, Skull and Bones, CIA, DEA, Mafia, and the IRS are just some of the groups that make up the true power behind the throne of America.
So this is this place, Bohemian Grove, and the idea was that all the elites would go there and they would engage in these occult rituals. So Alex films these people worshiping Moloch, the owl god. He is there filming them. They have an effigy, like a bunch of straw and that's supposed to represent a person that you're sacrificing to Moloch, the owl god. They're dressed in these crazy hoods. They put the effigy down. They say they have those loudspeakers. They have this crazy speech they give. It's so weird. But these are like legitimate, wealthy, famous people, politicians. These people are heads of banks and shit. And they're going there and they're dressing up. This is real. Right. Like, this isn't like you hear things like that. You're like, well, that's nonsense, right? That's nonsense. That doesn't really happen. There's not a real like Bilderberg meeting. They don't really get together and pretend they're burning hookers.
They really do.
They really do. But when you see that video, you have to go, okay, what is this? What is going on? Are they really dressing up? Is this really an occult ritual? What is this? It's one of the first things that got me thinking about conspiracies.
To show that the word bloodline is not just a figure of speech, let's take a look at the actual facts. Carefully outlined here are the actual lineages of American presidents and their bloodline connected to European aristocracies of power. Starting from Edward II and III of England, 28 out of our 42 presidents were connected by blood, including President Bush and Vice President Quayle, who were also in fact related to each other. Most of the 14 not connected by blood were connected by fraternal orders used by the bloodlines, with only a few exceptions, notably in disruption, the Kennedys, seeking to disrupt this dynasty of power in America. Justifiably feeling threatened, the established bloodlines of power in America removed the Kennedy threat.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control.
You ever heard the Kennedy speech about secret societies? It's f***ing creepy. When it turns out that he eventually gets murdered, it's creepy.
And these things, I think, tie into what happened to Bobby Kennedy, what happened to Martin Luther King, what happened to John F. Kennedy. And these people can get together and they can say, hey, you know, John Kennedy, this guy's a problem, he's dangerous, whatever they want to say about him, they can say that about Bobby Kennedy. Of course, you know, there's some discussion about, have they said that about Donald Trump?
You hear a lot about it, but is there such a thing as a deep state? You bet there is. And though it's been around a long time, it's never been as obvious, as identifiable, or as desperate as it is now. And the reason it wasn't obvious, or that you never really heard much about a shadow government that really ran things, was because no one had ever threatened their power. Well, along comes Donald Trump. And because President Trump has openly defied conventional norms for conducting military and foreign policy, the entire deep state has come undone. No one has ever threatened their ironclad control. And they're going berserk to preserve and to protect their kingdom at the expense of yours.
Hannity Watch on the Deep State. This is where we begin tonight with something that should shock and alarm every single American. And I don't care if you're liberal, conservative. We were right. I have been sounding the alarm on this program with a team of investigative reporters for over 2 years. And now today, more confirmation than we ever thought we'd have that we are dealing with, yes, a deep state and what is the biggest abuse of power, corruption scandal in the history of this country. A lot of revelations in here that should scare the living daylights out of anybody that believes in the rule of law and our Constitution. However, this next revelation from McCabe's interview is much, much more alarming. Take a look at this.
Former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe said there were discussions about using the 25th Amendment to remove President Trump from office. In his new book, The Threat, How the FBI Protects America in the Age of Terror and Trump, McCabe details his concerns about the president's possible connections to Russia.
I was speaking to the man who had just run for the presidency and won the election for the presidency, and who might have done so with the aid of the government of Russia, our most formidable adversary on the world stage. And that was something that troubled me greatly.
McCabe describes a chaotic time, especially at the Justice Department, when questions are being asked whether Jim Comey was fired to obstruct the Russia investigation, and if so, is the president an agent of Russia? There were meetings at the Justice Department in which it was discussed whether the vice president and a majority of the cabinet could be brought together to remove the president of the United States under the 25th Amendment. These were the 8 days from Comey's firing to the point that Robert Mueller was appointed special counsel.
There was a discussion underway about removing the president of the United States.
They were counting noses. They were speculating this person would be with us, that person would not be, and they were counting noses in that effort.
Here you have federal law enforcement discussing removing a president without an impeachment or an election. That's not democratic. It's the opposite of democratic, but that's what they tried to do.
Agreed. But what you're saying is that they were considering it because they didn't like the policies. And I don't think that's the case at all.
Why were they considering
There's a genuine concern about how Russia was involved in the 2016 election.
Okay, but so the amendment was written for a president who's incapacitated, not for a president whose policies you find repugnant or disagree with.
What we're defending is protecting the investigation. So we have a good understanding of exactly what Russia was doing in the 2016 elections. Whether that collusion rises to the president is the question.
Okay, just for the record, there's no, quote, collusion with Russia in the Roger Stone indictments. Okay, no one has been indicted for colluding with anybody so far.
Acting as a liaison between WikiLeaks on behalf of the Russia.
But that is not, look, it's not a crime and it's not collusion. Does it really honestly, as a citizen, not bother you that a federal law enforcement agency discussed removing the president of the United States by non-democratic means? Now, remember months ago, we first reported this deep state conspiracy to oust the president, a silent coup. Now, today, the witch hunt rages on, all while two actual real examples of collusion go totally and completely ignored by the deep state. And they even plotted and schemed to remove a duly elected president from office because they didn't like him or want him to win. And so far, it seems like they're getting away with it, because a small group of very powerful, high-ranking, unelected officials obviously were able to yield so much power over this country, our lives, and your decisions and your choices at the ballot box. That's what happened. That's why every American needs to be concerned. Hillary Clinton should have been indicted. They protected her because they wanted Trump. Trump should win 100 million to lose 100 million to zero. And they had an insurance policy. Do we now know what that insurance policy is?
Well, it was the Russia hoax via the anti-Trump dossier that was paid for by Hillary Clinton and fed to the FBI and the Department of Justice to launch this dilating investigation without evidence, without probable cause. And Americans today, especially given what we learned from Andrew McCabe, should be alarmed and disgusted at the devious and malevolent
And this isn't rank and file.
This is just a few horrible, powerful actors.
Elected top officials in law enforcement sought a coup d'etat to overthrow the president of the United States by misusing the Constitution.
This really was a proposed coup.
This is sedition. Yes. This is the attempt to sabotage a duly elected president.
And it's unprecedented in American history, this attempt to have a coup. And what you're seeing holistically is that Trump, almost as a magic wand or something, he's brought out the real progressive self, and that's hysterical. They've broken the law.
I agree with you.
They've tried to stage a coup, and they have a platform that I don't think any American can possibly vote for. And it's the common denominator is they are unhinged. Something about Donald Trump pushed him over the edge.
If they're afraid of him, he must be doing some good.
I think they are. And again, getting back to JFK, Donald Trump has made it clear that he was going to drain the swamp. The people that elected him for office expect him to do that. The CIA and specifically the FBI have been engaged in this kind of treasonous behavior for a couple of decades now, obstructing justice. And we saw that in the Hillary Clinton server so-called investigation. So they have a lot of things to hide and a lot of skeletons in the closet. They are terrified that Donald Trump is going to look into those things and that there's an investigation going to be done. So they are trying everything they can to destroy his character or worse. So that doesn't happen, because if it does, their felonies will be exposed.
The crazy attempt by the Democrat Party and the fake news media right back there. And the deep state to overturn the results of the 2016 election have failed the greatest election that we've had in a long time, maybe right from the beginning. The Russia witch hunt was a plan by those who lost the election to try and illegally regain power by framing innocent Americans, many of them, they suffered, with an elaborate hoax. They wanted to destroy a movement like our country has never seen before. That's true. Never seen before. And all of the current and former officials who paid for, promoted, and perpetuated the single greatest hoax in the history of politics in our country. They have to be, I'm sorry, they have to be accountable.
I don't think they expected Trump to win. I really don't. And the guy's made a lot of mistakes, but you have to understand something here. The people that are behind him, whether you love it or hate it, they are not cabal. They are purging the cabal out of the government, the military, and the media. I look at Donald Trump as a battering ram that smashes the hole in the castle so everybody else can run in. You got to realize that we are in a civil war. We've never had somebody win a presidential election and take on the media the way that Trump has done. It's never happened before. If you actually look at what Trump was really saying in these speeches, it's a lot of the same stuff that I've been saying for years and many other people on stages like this have been saying for years. Trutherism became mainstream, and trutherism frickin' won the U.S. presidential election. And that is amazing.
Let me tell you what Trump does. He is like up till 2 in the morning, everybody knows.
Tweeting.
Tweeting.
Get mad at
he watches
people.
video clips. He gets on the internet now.
He's a conspiracy theorist.
Which means he questions
Donald Trump.
Okay.
He's our president.
Yeah. He's a different kind of thing.
Is he going to open 9/11?
He's a rogue element.
9/11. Is he going to do anything about that?
He's already exposed the fact that elements of the government worked with Saudi Arabia to launch the September 11th attacks 16 years ago.
He's going to reopen that?
He said he will.
Trump is a major force, global force right now. Trump, and he talks to Alex Jones. Alex Jones talks to Joe Rogan, and I'm here because of Joe Rogan. I'm like, holy we got some kind of lightning bolt going through the world right now with this
Sure,
podcast.
but it's not
You
like
think Donald Trump is in the middle of an awakening, a conspiracy theory awakening? Do you think
Trump is 100% real.
He's like, is he in the middle of an awakening?
Yes.
We know that Trump, his uncle, was one of the people that got Tesla's papers. He was a professor at MIT. taught engineering, and he was also Donald Trump's favorite uncle. Is it possible that he might know more than we think?
It was interesting when I was being briefed to do this meeting with the CI director in '93. I was told only about a third of the command and control people on this committee, there were 200 or 300 people in the Majority Intelligence Committee, were in favor of anything I was recommending for the president about disclosure. Not too long ago, I was told it's about 70% are now in favor of that.
Your reputation's amazing. I will not let you down. You will be very, very impressed, I hope.
All right, thank you for joining us today for that presentation. We will be back hopefully tomorrow night, or maybe even tonight, not sure. Until next time, God bless you all. Eyes open, no fear.